So hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was Adamantium Quirk. Part 1. If you guys enjoy this, what if? And you want to see part 2. Comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also share this video with your friends. And check out the description. And check out my playlist. So let's start the video. Chapter 1 Sludge Villain. Boy, Kiba. Pass it to me. A blonde-haired boy yelled. Listening to his call, Kiba kicked the ball at him. It looked like it was going to go out of bounds, it had been kicked way too high up in the air. However, the blonde-haired boy crouched and suddenly launched himself in the air. It was as if there was a jetpack attached to his back. He got 2 times more airtime than the world record of the best NBA player in the world from a few generations ago, and, to top it all off, he also made an impressive flip in the air before axe-kicking the soccer ball with the heel of his foot, accurately blasting it towards the corner of the opposing team's goal post like a rocket. It was the exaggerated swagger of a mutant-type quirk user. The goalkeeper had not even seen the ball coming. Before he knew what happened, not only that the ball flew past his head like a bullet, it even made a hole in the net of the goal post and exploded with a loud boom when it smashed against the outer wall of the school in the back of the soccer field. The blonde boy landed on the ground gracefully and made a victory pose, quite proud of the awesome goal that he had just scored. But the other children on the pitch did not look surprised in the least. Instead, they were annoyed. "You bastard, always showing off and stealing my thunder." Kiba yelled, but in spite of his words, there was a toothy grin on his face as he came and high-fived him. Booing sounds came from the opposing team. "Sensei, it's not fair." Uzumaki used his quirk again. One of the boys in the opposing team complained. The PE teacher, a burly middle-aged man with a whistle hanging from his neck, frowned in thought as he looked at Naruto. He appeared like a rather normal middle school boy. If you ignored the fluffy golden fox ears on his head, the whisker-like birthmarks on his face, and the bushy but silky-looking golden furred tail at his back. Uzumaki Naruto had a rather simple and seemingly banal quirk. A fox quirk. In the early days of the apparition of quirks, animal-type quirks were not seen as very formidable, looking rather tame compared to emitter-type quirks that could create explosions, release electricity, summon tornadoes and so on and so forth. However, as of late, with the emergence of amazing heroes with animal-type quirks, people gained a newfound respect for such simple mutant-type quirks. For example, among the top 10 strongest heroes in Japan, one had a rabbit quirk. While rabbits were harmless and skittish creatures normally, the rabbit hero, Mirko, could not be any more different than that. She was relentless and violent, a woman that never backed down from a fight. Her explosive power and speed were something to be feared. Nowadays, over 80% of Japan's population has a quirk. Quirkless people had become increasingly rare with the passing of years. To prevent potential accidents and tragedies, students in public schools were forbidden from using their quirks. However, the lines were rather blurred when it came to heteromorphic-type quirks. Generally, mutant types did not have to activate any sort of power to enhance themselves. They were physically superior by nature, performing superhuman feats was the norm for them. The PE. The teacher was broken off from his musings when another blonde boy, "Why were all blondes problem children?" kicked the ball, and a mighty explosion propelled it forward, not any slower than Uzumaki Naruto's previous shot. The goalkeeper of the opposite team had been too scared to even attempt defending and instead jumped away from the goal post, afraid for his life. A sharp whistle noise rang, and both Naruto and Kiba suddenly crouched and covered their ears with their hands. "Sensei, stop, it hurts." They yelled at the same time, their sense of hearing being way more sensitive than that of regular humans. While Uzumaki Naruto had a fox quirk, Kiba, a brown-haired boy, had a mutant-type quirk as well. A dog quirk. Similar to Naruto, Kiba also had a pair of pointed dog ears on top of his head. In addition, his teeth and nails were sharper than average, and a dog's scraggly tail wagged listlessly at his back. With such similar quirks and matching personalities too, both of them were hyperactive, boisterous, and loud. The 2 boys had clicked off from the very first moment they had met. Naruto and Kiba were best friends. The Kugo, red card. "You're out. Team Blue gets a free kick." The teacher shouted, but all the members of the red team started complaining out loud. "Not fair. Why can Uzumaki use his quirk and Kitsuki not? You're biased, it's not fair, sensei." The teacher felt like wanting to pull out his hair due to frustration. How could he explain to the students that mutant-type quirks were different from emitter-type quirks? It was, indeed, unfair, but such was life too. The only way to stop people with mutant-type quirks from using their strength and natural advantages, imagine a 4-armed man for a goalkeeper, was to ban them from playing completely, but that would lead to the opening of another can of worms, discrimination, which was even worse. Allowing everyone to use their quirks was not an option either because it would completely sideline quirkless people too. No matter how one went about it, a particular group would be disadvantaged. Banning emitter-type quirk users from using their powers was the most fair option there was. In the end, the match did not get a proper finish as it devolved into a huge argument between students and the teacher, with the principal being forced to intervene in order to put a stop to it. TCH. The soccer championship was cancelled this year too. To heck with that. They should just let everyone use their quirks. We'd still kick everyone's butts. The fox-like boy said as he walked on the sidewalk while juggling skillfully with a soccer ball. But of course. We're the strongest in the whole school. Why is the school catering to all these losers with useless quirks? Kiba said in annoyance. Boy, that was mean. Izuku here doesn't have a quirk at all, Naruto said. The boy in question stammered and waved his hands as if to say he doesn't mind it, but Naruto put his hands on his waist and said. Listen, man, you gotta have more confidence. You can't let people walk over you like that. Stand up for yourself. If you don't punt dog breath when he goes out of line, he'll never learn his lesson. What was that, cunt? I'll kick your ass. Kiba yelled and a growl-like sound came from him. Be easy for you to say that when you have such an amazing quirk, Izuku murmured. He was a short and rather scrawny boy with wavy green hair and a timid-looking freckled face. Izuku had spoken quietly enough that regular people would not be able to hear his words, but the two boys next to him just happened to have an extremely sharp sense of hearing among other things. Even if you can't do something by yourself, you should rely on your friends a bit, Naruto said with a grin and threw his arm around Izuku's shoulder. That's what friends are for. We help each other. I still haven't forgotten how you helped me pass my maths term exam. If it weren't for you, I would be stuck in cramped school now. The green-haired boy smiled shyly at Naruto's encouragement. That's right. You might be quirkless, but you're our friend, Kiba said in agreement and punched him lightly in the shoulder. And if that exploding blonde bastard tries to find trouble with you again, just tell me. I will beat the crap out of him every time he tries to bully you. There's no need for that. Katsuki is leaving me alone these days, Izuku said and showed a big smile. While the three boys were in the same year, Naruto and Kiba were not in the same class as Izuku. Izuku and his bully, Bakugo, were in a different class. After Kiba and Naruto took Izuku under their wings, Bakugo had tried to find trouble with Izuku for betraying their class and siding with the enemy. Bakugo had an intense rivalry with the amazing duo of fox and dog quirk users from the other class. In truth, Bakugo couldn't care less about his class, it was just a pretext he found to mess with Izuku. All that repressed anger and annoyance at not being able to defeat Inuzuka Kiba had to be vented somewhere, and what better choice of a target than a quirkless boy that could not defend himself. However, things did not end well for the bully. Once Kiba found out about it, in a fit of anger, he jumped on Bakugo the next time he saw him and proceeded to beat him so badly that even his mother had trouble recognizing his face. That day, Inuzuka Kiba had claimed the position as the top dog in Aldera Junior High. Kiba got suspended for 2 weeks for that stunt. Bakugo's mother had even tried to press charges, but she dropped the matter soon after because altercations between teenagers with quirks were far too common these days. Seeing as her son had not suffered any lasting trauma from the incident, it would be difficult for her case to find any success in court. Regular teens had always been a volatile mass of emotions, pride, and more energy than they knew what to do with it. Adding superpowers into the mix was a recipe for disaster. For example, only a few days ago, a teen boy had stolen someone's bag and when he was found out and cornered, he went out of control. Transforming into a giant humanoid monster, he started to wreak havoc. The incident made it to the local newspapers. As the three boys walked home together, they kept talking and joking around happily. Eventually, they had to disband their merry little group seeing as they lived in different areas of the district. As Naruto walked home, he continued to play with his soccer ball. Sometimes, he would run at the passers-by coming from the opposite direction, startling them, only to do a rainbow soccer trick, kicking the ball with his heel, from the back, over his and his opponents' heads before rushing past them. Sometimes, people would get annoyed with him, but most of them would usually just smile helplessly at him. After years of witnessing his shenanigans, most of the people on that street had become familiar with the energetic fox-like boy. Right as he passed by a playground, the younger kids that saw him with the ball quickly rushed out and crowded around him. Naruto Nai-san. Show us some cool tricks. They all yelled enthusiastically. As per usual, Naruto did not ignore their pleas. He loved showing off his soccer skills. Alright, just gimme some space, yo, he said and entered the playground with his ball. With the kids moving a bit back and making a circle around him, Naruto grinned at them and put his foot on top of the ball. Suddenly, he rolled the ball towards him and lifted it in the air with the tip of his foot right above his head. Before the ball could fall to the ground, he stepped in and bent down a bit, the ball landing right on the back of his neck. So far, so good. It was nothing amazing, just a neck stall, any other soccer enthusiast could probably do that. It was what followed that made the kids all break into loud cheers. In an impressive display of dexterity and body-eye coordination, Naruto used his knees, feet, and even his fluffy tail to juggle the ball spectacularly. All good things come to an end, however, and accompanied by a chorus of disappointed whines from the kids, Naruto left the playground and started heading home once again. Suddenly, an obnoxious baby laughter ringtone rang, and Naruto groaned. It was his cell phone. Flipping it open and answering the call, he was forced to distance the phone from his sensitive hearing as a woman's loud voice blasted into his eardrums. "Naruto. What are you doing, you delinquent? School finished 40 minutes ago, get home already." Alright, sheesh, I'm on my way, why are you yelling?" he yelled back. "Don't you raise your voice at me, young man. Just wait till you get home." Naruto snorted and shut the flip of his phone closed, effectively ending the call. He did not really care about his mother's retaliation and threats in the least. All his father could do was yell at him. And that was a common issue for many parents nowadays. When children had quirks so powerful that they would not look out of place in a superhero comic book, their parents were often at a loss in how to deal with them when they acted rebellious. What's her problem anyway? Not like I'm doing any illegal shit. I'm not even smoking like the cool kids, and I'm not doing drugs either like punks who skip classes. All she does is bitch about my grades and for coming home late every day." Picking up his ball in his hands, he started walking home, not even in the mood to play around anymore. "What do I even need good grades for anyway?" he grumbled and kicked a piece of rock on the sidewalk in frustration. He was not oblivious in regards to how amazing his quirk was. While the fox quirk seemed nothing special compared to some emitter quirks out there, Naruto had yet to meet anyone who could beat him in a one-on-one fight. Even someone with an overpowered quirk like Bakugo Katsuki from his school couldn't beat him. After all, Naruto was a tiny bit stronger than Kiba, and the dog quirk user had mopped the floor with Bakugo. Furthermore, besides his enhanced dexterity and physical capabilities, Naruto's fox quirk granted him a powerful sense of smell, very sensitive hearing, and excellent eyesight and night vision too. His career paths were promising. Even if he didn't become a hero, which was doubtful, he could easily join the police special forces. The anti-drug department would do anything short of killing to get someone like him in their ranks. It was while he was having these thoughts that something had all of a sudden slammed into the crown of his head and he toppled over, the side in front of his eyes darkening. So disoriented and shocked he was that he didn't even register the pain for a moment, he didn't understand what was happening. But 2 seconds later, pain exploded from his head. It was as if someone had cracked his skull open with an axe, as a mind-splitting headache made him break out in cries of pain as he held his head. The wet and sticky feeling on his hands let him know that he was bleeding and bleeding profusely at that. Even as his eyes were tightly shut as he tried to cope with the insane amount of pain, his sensitive fox ears picked up the sound of liquid flowing close by. His eyes opened in shock when he felt his body getting engulfed by a wet and disgusting feeling. What the he cried out, but the green mass of mud and goo that had suddenly entrapped him took that chance to cover his mouth and nose, muffling his yells of fear. Instincts took over and the boy started fighting desperately for his life. His nails lengthened into claws and his body began spasming and squirming as he kicked and scratched at the mass of goo with everything he had. However, his struggle accomplished nothing except making him burn oxygen faster. With the green sludge covering his mouth and nose, he could not breathe. His movement slowed down to a stop and his arms fell down lifelessly. He was moments away from dying from asphyxiation. "Help. Somebody. Help me," Naruto cried out in his mind. But there was nobody around. He was attacked in a less frequented alley where people did not pass by too often. To top it off, his attacker had muffled his cries and subdued him too quickly for anyone to hear his struggle. His sight went pitch dark as his eyes rolled in the back of his head. He lost consciousness. In a minute or two, he would die. It is said that moments before dying, people see their lives flash before their eyes. But what played at the front of Naruto's mind were not memories of his life. They were the memories of a different person. An orphan and a lonely boy who pulled all kinds of pranks and annoyed the hell out of everyone just for them to notice his existence. A boy who could make clones of himself. Someone whose creed was to never give up and never go back on his word. Someone who fought against a godlike man who had annihilated an entire military city by himself. Someone who had even become strong to fight on equal grounds against a goddess. That someone looked eerily similar to him. He had no fox ears and no tails either, but everything else was too similar for it to be a coincidence. The same blonde hair, the same baby blue eyes, the same 3 pairs of whisker-like birthmarks on his cheeks. They even had the same name. It was him. an incredibly powerful version of Naruto Uzumaki from another life, from another world. The sludge villain chortled to himself. Lucky, lucky. So lucky. He had never expected to escape after All Might had defeated him and sealed him in a plastic bottle. And, not only that he had escaped, but the bottle he had been sealed into also happened to crash into the head of a passing-by boy with a fox quirk. Disoriented and wobbly from the powerful hit, the boy had been knocked down, unaware of his surroundings for a moment. The fact that he had not been knocked out cold was a testament to his toughness. But with him momentarily out of it, the sludge villain had to spend next to no effort in capturing the boy. A fox quirk. Not the best, but not bad either, the villain hummed in glee as the mud his body consisted of started to flow through the boy's mouth. He was going to take over him, to possess him. Suddenly, a shrill scream of agony erupted from the sludge villain as a glowing chain of light burst from the boy's spine and impaled the green goo around him. What's happening? The villain screamed in incomprehension. His mud-like body offered him a degree of resistance against physical attacks that almost bordered immunity. He could not be harmed even by bullets, much less by some pointed chain. However, his train of thought ceased when another golden chain burst from the boy's back and stabbed into the mud, making the villain scream himself hoarse from the pain once more. Terror engulfed the sludge villain's mind, and the shadow of death crept into his heart. He had to get away. He didn't understand how he could be wounded so severely by some chains, but he had a feeling that if another one or two of those chains impaled him, he would perish. But right as the mass of green goo curled out of the boy's body and tried to scurry away, two more golden chains burst out of the still unconscious boy's back and rose high up in the air. A dome of golden light had suddenly come into existence, and when the sludge villain tried to pass through it, much to his shock, the mud making up his body dried up and solidified on contact. He lost control over his body, and that portion of solidified mud broke away from him. Further thought regarding that anomaly ended, however, as the sharp and pointed ends of the four golden chains that created the chain dome had suddenly stabbed into his body. The sludge villain could not even find the strength to voice out his frustration and unwillingness to die. Even as the last portion of his body dried up and broke into pieces, his last thought was one of disbelief, unable to accept or understand how after escaping from the hands of the #1 strongest hero, he would die at the hands of some nameless 14-year-old boy. Chapter 2 Illusion or Reality? Ah, how could I make such a mistake? A very tall and thin young man yelled at himself. As he climbed down the stairs from the rooftop of the building where he landed together with the fanboy who had clung to him, All Might was stupefied to discover that the plastic bottle in which he had sealed the sludge villain was no longer in the pocket of his cargo pants. That rush of frustration and exasperation was so intense that it made him slightly dizzy and he had to stop momentarily to not puke blood again. I can't even go searching for him anymore, I've reached my limit for today. As he passed by a window, a sharp glint shone in the corner of his eyes, and the blond man turned his head to see a golden dome of light rising from between two buildings. But it only lasted for a few seconds before it disappeared. However, the aftermath deeply startled him as he saw the two buildings that the dome of light had touched started tilting towards each other. It looked like that golden dome of light had damaged the outer walls of the buildings. Color drained from his face and, in spite of the great harm he was doing to his body, by forcing himself to go back into his muscular form after having already reached his limit, All Might smashed his way through the window and launched himself towards the scene. He arrived there just in time to see a boy in his mid-teens lying unconscious on the ground and pieces of dried up green mud and sludge scattered all over the place. He recognized those remains as the sludge villain that he had encountered only a few minutes ago. But All Might did not waste his already limited time thinking too much about the situation. Saving the lives of other people came first. Scooping the unconscious boy in his arms, he quickly jumped into the collapsing buildings to save the rest of the people trapped within. Fortunately, All Might was not the only hero that had arrived at the scene speedily. Other prominent heroes such as Kamui, Death Arms, and Backdraft had also come to help the people trapped in the half-collapsed buildings. Fortunately, nobody had died, but there were dozens of injured people, and the property damage was significant as well. But where did that golden light come from? What kind of quirk is that? It was the question that everyone was asking on the internet seeing as the incident had gone viral. Unfortunately for the curious people, nobody had managed to capture the actual moment in a photo or in a video, so they were not clear on what had caused the buildings to collapse. What was clear, however, was that a villain with a powerful quirk had tried to attack a young boy who was on his way home from school. What made the situation go viral is that not only that two buildings had been destroyed and dozens of people had been injured, but that the villain in question was found dead at the scene as well. And that had led to all sorts of speculations. Did that boy kill the villain? But how? According to the authorities, he only has a fox quirk. It was a bad matchup against the sludge villain. Maybe he has two quirks. Is that even possible? I mean, there's Endeavor's son. He has both a fire and an ice quirk. Yo, hear me out. What if there is a third person? What if someone else was at the scene and killed the villain before running away? The vigilante. While the media outlets and the people on the internet were fussing greatly over this matter, the boy in question was still unconscious, in the hospital. 2 days passed since the sludge villain's attack and subsequent death, but the victim had to regain his consciousness. My son, is he going to be okay? Please tell me he's fine. A blonde-haired man said, his voice cracking towards the end. His eyes were filled with unshed tears. Next to him, a red-haired woman was crying in silence, her face buried in her palms. Naruto's parents were greatly distraught over the news. Fatal accidents in today's society were much more common than several decades ago. Cases of young children dying due to their own quirks or cases of villains killing people were not rare, to say the least. When such a high percentage of people possessed superpowers, it stood to reason that the mortality rate among average people would increase as well. Regardless of all that, it had never gotten any easier for doctors to tell the truth to the parents of a dying child. Currently, I can't promise you anything. There are signs that he had almost died of asphyxiation. If his brain was left without oxygen for too long, I fear. The doctor let out a sigh and trailed off when his words made the child's mother break. Her husband could do nothing except for hugging her to his chest, even as tears were rolling down his cheeks too. Do not despair. There is still hope, the doctor said, trying to alleviate their suffering. Your boy is a warrior. He might fight through this. There is still hope, he said, repeating himself. Just as he finished his words, a nurse arrived in a rush and said, Dr. Tachikawa. He's awakened. The boy was awake and he asked for water. Without waiting for the medical staff's permission, the two parents rushed towards their son's room at the same time. The white ceiling, an oddly familiar and unpleasant smell of antibiotics, and the sound of medical machines beeping in the background. Naruto did not take long to realize that he was in a hospital. But before he could make sense of it, a burning sensation in his throat made him unconsciously ask for water. A few moments later, two people burst through the door of his hospital room at the same time, rushing to his bed. Blonde spiky hair, fair complexion, blue eyes, a thin build and a kind smile on his face. A face that looked so similar to his. It was none other than Minato Namikaze. Father. He croaked. Suddenly, a curtain of red hair obstructed his view as a woman threw her arms around him, hugging him for all he was worth and soaking the crook of his neck with her tears. Mother. Outside of his will, his eyes teared up and he started to cry as well. He had never thought he would one day see his parents alive. He had seen their chakra remnants and the reanimated corpse of his father during the war. But they had not been alive. Not like now. Naruto. My son. My dear Naruto. Kushina could not stop crying. Minato too sat on the edge of the bed and patted his head while trying to stop his own tears from flowing. The nurses and the doctor on the side found their own eyes getting wet too at the emotional side of the reunited family. However, at that moment, a sudden thought cut through Naruto's heart like a searing hot blade. This is a lie. Only an illusion. He could still remember it as if it had happened yesterday. He could still vividly recall the rabbit goddess, Kagaya, killing Sasuke and then pulling out of his body. He could still vividly remember the god tree's branches wrapping around him and the blood-red moon shining ominously in the sky. He started to cry even harder as his arms wrapped around his mother's back, embracing her as if it was the last time. But after a few moments, his hands came together and his fingers formed a ram seal. He whispered. However, nothing happened. He said, this time speaking out loud. Kushina lifted her head and looked at him in worry. What's wrong, honey? Naruto closed his eyes and sobbed in silence. This isn't real. None of this is real. Only an illusion to trick me. An illusion of the life I've never had, he said. Admitting those words out loud caused him untold amounts of pain. What are you saying, dear? I'm real. I'm here. Kushina said, starting to get scared of what her son was saying. Even if it was only an imaginary world, an illusion, Naruto could not help his tears. I love you, Mom. Looking up at his father he told him too. I love you, Dad. I wish I could stay here forever. I wish I could be with you forever. He could not continue as he choked on a sob. But I can't. This isn't real. He put his hands again in a ram seal and shouted. Release. Kai. Alerted by the boy's shouts, the doctor and the nurses pulled Minato and Kushina from his bed. Even as Naruto started to shout in desperation as if he was trying to break a spell, one of the nurses came with a syringe and injected a serum into his neck. In a few seconds, the boy's agitation disappeared and he closed his eyes. A few moments later, he fell asleep. 2 weeks later. Come on, man, even Bakugo doesn't want to miss out on this. We gotta show that bastard who the best class is. Kiba said, his voice half annoyed, half pleading. Since the soccer championship had been cancelled without the two rival teams finding out who exactly was the best, the students decided to have an unofficial match after classes outside of school and decide it once and for all. Sorry, man, I can't. Dad needs my help with the car. 2 weeks passed since the sludge villain incident happened and Naruto had become the most famous kid in his school. However, it only took a few days for everyone to realize that he was a changed person since that day. Gon was the boisterous boy who would play with a soccer ball even in the classroom during breaks. Gon was the full of life and energetic child that always showed a toothy grin to everyone. While most people chalked it up to him almost dying and dealt with it accordingly, Inyazuka Kiba could not readily understand why Naruto never wanted to hang out after school with him and the gang anymore or why he had become so quiet and introverted. You were a great help, Naruto, thank you. Minato said while wiping his hands of engine oil with a piece of rag. I didn't do much, only gave you some wrenches and screws, Naruto said with a bright smile, visibly happy at his father's compliments. It may not be much for you, but it meant a lot for me. Lots of time and effort is saved by not getting up from beneath the car every time just for a wrench, Minato said and mirrored his son's bright smile. He threw his arm around Naruto's shoulder and said. Tell you what. How about we take your mother and we all go out today for a pizza tonight instead of having dinner at home? For real? The boy said in excitement. When did I ever lie to you? If possible, Naruto's smile became even wider. Awesome. I'll go tell mom. Helping his father around the garage, mowing the lawn, washing the dishes, taking out the trash, and even helping out his mother with cooking. Kushina had not even known her son could cook. Ever since almost dying at the hands of the sludge villain, it was as if Naruto had become a completely different person. While beforehand he was bratty and had a tense relationship with his parents, nowadays it looked like he was attached to their hip. He was doing everything in his power to be together with them for as long as possible every day. It had to be said that both Minato and Kushina were deeply moved by the changes in their son. Not a day passed without Kushina giving him at least a half a minute long hug. If it was Naruto from before, he would try to get away from her arms as fast as possible while saying in annoyance that he wasn't a little kid anymore. But nowadays, whenever his mom hugged him, Naruto melted in her arms and hugged her back just as tight. Whenever his father called him for a game of chess, Naruto would even put down his homework and come play with him. It was to the point where his parents were starting to worry about him and were thinking about going with him to a psychologist for therapy. It was only Naruto's insistence that he was perfectly fine that stopped them from going through with it. I just never appreciated how lucky I am to be alive, Naruto said when they had tried to talk to him about their worries regarding the drastic changes in his behavior. How lucky I am to have parents. Good parents like you. I almost died. You saw me when I woke up at first. I thought I was dreaming. I thought it was an illusion. But I survived. I want to make the most of my life. And I want to show you every day how much I appreciate and respect you. Those heartfelt words completely disarmed Minato and Kushina of all the arguments that they had prepared beforehand to convince him of going to therapy. In the first place, it was impossible for them to be mad about the fact that their teenage son stopped being a brat and showed his affection for them so openly now. Even as almost 1 month passed since he had regained the memories of his past life, Naruto still felt like he was dreaming. For a long time, he had thought that his current life was nothing but an illusion. He had thought that the infinite Tsukiyomi that Madara had cast on the moon had entrapped him too after he lost the fight against Kagaya. However, as days passed one by one, he was beginning to accept that his current life was not an illusion. In the first place, he could not feel the existence of chakra. He had tried countless times to access it, but to no avail. Furthermore, Japan and the society he lived in currently could not be any more different from the elemental nations and Konohagakure no Sado. They were so different and there were so many new things that his mind alone could not have imagined such stuff. It was impossible for Genjutsu to show him something that he had never heard of before. Even if I'm wrong and everything I've felt for the past 14 years was fake, even if all of it was just an illusion or just a dream, I don't want to wake up. Chapter 3 Recommendation. Listen to me, Naruto. Never reveal the quirk of yours to anyone. No matter what. Even if your best friend. No, even if your father and I were to die in front of your eyes, as long as there are other people around, never use your chains. Never. Before leaving the hospital his mother had insisted he did now answer any of the curious questions of the nurses or the reporters. She had also chased away any of the journalists that tried to interview him in regards to the incident after he was discharged from the hospital. He let out a sigh and he caressed his fluffy foxtail with his hands, making sure it was entirely wet before grabbing a bottle from the edge of the shower cab that showed an image of a furry tail and a pair of animal ears. Turning off the water, he started to scrub his fur with a special shampoo, making a great deal of bubbles. To think that I'd one day become just like the characters from that pervert's books. Naruto thought in amusement at the memory of his mentor from his previous life and his icha. Come on, a Mimi book. His amusement did not last for long because his mind soon went back to his second quirk, the adamantine sealing chains, and the serious discussion that he had had with his mother. The only time I allow you to use this quirk is if your life is in peril and you have absolutely no other way of escaping without it. Please, Naruto. You have to promise me that you'll never use it. Kushina said pleadingly and, much to Naruto's surprise, 4 golden chains started growing from her back. You have that quirk too? I thought you were quirkless. He said in disbelief. How could she have kept such an important secret from her family for such a long time? Kushina nodded her head and said in a heavy voice. Just like I asked you to never reveal your quirk to anyone, my grandmother had asked the same of me too. If you had not awakened this quirk, I would have never told you this secret either. I would have taken it to the grave with me. Judging by the expression on his face, Kushina knew that her son understood the severity of the situation. Our quirk is special. It doesn't manifest like other quirks in early childhood. It takes a moment of great stress or desperation to awaken it. It could happen when you are very young, but it could also happen when you are in your 20s or older. Or, it might not awaken at all. For example, my grandmother awakened these chains when she was in her late 30s, but my mother never awakened this quirk at all. As for me, I was 8 years old when it happened, during the car crash in which my parents died. What I'm telling you now is 100% serious, Naruto, this is not a joke. A very powerful man has had his eyes on this quirk for decades. It's only thanks to my grandmother's efforts, Mito, that he had lost all traces of our family. But the moment that you reveal your quirk to the public, he will find out. He will find you, and he will kill you. But why would someone be so obsessed with this quirk? Naruto asked, a bit freaked out. Think about the villain that attacked you. He had a powerful mutant-type quirk, but your chains nullified it. These chains. They do have their downsides, they are rather slow, so heroes and villains specializing in speed can avoid them without much problem, and their limited range makes those capable of flight difficult to catch. But if someone does get caught by the chains, it is all over. There is no escaping from it. Our quirk is the bane of all quirks. And that's why my grandmother had been hunted down, why I had kept my quirk a secret even from my family, and why you also need to keep it secret too, no matter the cost. The one who is after us will stop at nothing to get his hands on this quirk. Not a day passed without Naruto thinking back to his mom's words. Ever since that day, Kushina never brought up the topic again, nor had she ever used her quirk in front of him. It was a secret that only the two of them knew. I don't blame her for keeping it a secret from Dad, he thought while using the showerhead to rinse his foxtail. Unlike the Yellow Flash 4th Hokage from his previous life, Minato Namikaze of this world was just a regular man. He was a brilliant accountant and a devoted family man, but he was no fighter. As for Minato's special ability, his quirk was a perfect recall memory. That was one of the reasons why he was so successful in his professional life. That said, finding out that his wife and his son could one day end up in mortal peril would not do Minato any good. As intelligent as he was, Minato was still just an ordinary human. Mom doesn't trust me enough yet to tell me who's the one that wants our quirk. She doesn't know who I used to be in my previous life. Turning off the water, he stepped out of the shower and grabbed a large towel before taking a seat on a stool and starting to dry his hair, his fox ears, and his foxtail. I didn't even know it was possible to steal someone's quirk, he continued his train of thought. But I'll be damned if I let anyone touch even a single hair of Mom and Dad. They'd have to get over my dead body to do so. He had not appreciated his parents before. However, after regaining the memories of his previous life, his family had become the most important thing in the world. I may not have chakra in this world, but I'm not a regular human this time around either. This fox quirk, I will make the most of it. I will become powerful enough to protect the ones I love. Naruto had wanted to become a pro hero even before he recovered his memories, but his motivation was completely different now. Becoming a pro hero was no longer the end goal. Now, his end goal was to keep his family safe. Since you're all in your 3rd year, it's time for you to think seriously about your future. I'll pass out handouts for your future plans now, but you're all pretty much planning to go into the hero course, right? At the homeroom teacher's words, the class erupted into cheers and everyone started to show off their quirks. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks. But using your quirks at school is against the rules. A disdainful voice rang over all the other noises in the classroom, it was none other than Katsuki Bakugo. Sensei. Don't lump us all in the same group. I'm not gonna be stuck at the bottom with the rest of these rejects. That was uncalled for, Katsuki. Yeah, nobody asked for your opinion, shut up. But the blonde boy laughed in ridicule. You should shut you up like the extras that you are. Haha. While the kids were yelling at each other, the teacher looked through some of his files. Oh, if I remember correctly, you want to go to the UA High, right, Bakugo? As everyone in the class was voicing out their surprise, UA High was a national school renowned for its extremely low acceptance rate, barely 0.2% of the test participants managing to get in every year. Bakugo made sure to rub it in their faces. That's exactly why you guys are just extras. I aced the mock test. I'm the only one in this school who could possibly get into the UA. I'll definitely surpass All Might and become the top hero. My name will be inscribed on the list of top earners. But the teacher saw it as the perfect moment to pour a bucket of ice-cold water on his arrogance. I do not doubt you'll get famous one day with your quirk. But you're not the only one who is going to the UA this year. Uzumaki Naruto from Class D is coming along with you as well. Tatsuki Bakugo's face became an interesting shade of red, almost purple. It was as if he was going to explode. How is that possible? I never heard anything about that. Oh, Uzumaki Naruto had been recommended to the school by All Might himself. He doesn't need to take the exam, he has already been accepted in. Bakugo looked like he had just seen a ghost. He sat down in his seat and remained completely silent for the rest of the class, a dark aura lingering around him. So affected he had been by the news that someone had gotten a recommendation from the NO1 hero that he did not even hear the teacher talk about how Izuku Midoriya also wanted to go UA too. It was lunch break and Naruto was sitting at his desk, eating the food that his mother had cooked and packed for him that morning. Putting his palms together in a small prayer, he bowed his head and said, "I did Akamasu." But right as he was about to dig in, the door of the classroom was blown off its hinges with a loud bang, making other students cry out in panic. The blonde-haired boy stomped his way into the classroom, with the sleeves of his shirt rolled up and tiny explosions cracking in his palms. "Uzumaki. Fight me." He screamed in rage and, without even waiting for an answer, he jumped in the air and launched himself at the still-seated Naruto at his desk. Naruto. In the blink of an eye, Naruto stood up and jumped back over 2 rows of desks, accurately landing with the tip of his toes on the windowsill. Looking at his ruined and burning desk, he glared at the culprit. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he asked angrily. However, in Bakugo's eyes, it sounded way different. The fact that the fox boy had apparently had the leisure to not only dodge his charge but also grab his lunchbox and chopsticks from the table was like pouring gasoline on a fire. "You dare to mock me? Die!" Bakugo screamed enraged and lunged at Naruto full of bad intentions. But Naruto let himself fall on his back, easily slipping through the open window and falling to the ground from the 2nd floor. His classmates cried out in shock at what he did and even Bakugo stopped in his tracks in disbelief. But when he looked through the window and saw Naruto standing on the ground completely unharmed and even grabbing a meatball from his lunchbox with his chopsticks, Bakugo saw white in front of his eyes. He was so angry that he couldn't even form coherent sentences. "Why you bastard? I'll. In the end, he just gave up on speaking and jumped off through the window as well, his hands extended in front of him and booming with explosions. "Alright, that's quite enough," Naruto said in annoyance. Right as Bakugo's palm was 30 centimeters away from his face, Naruto stepped to the side, grabbed one of the boy's forearms with his free hand, the other one was still holding his lunchbox, and tripped him with his left foot. The boy had too much momentum to stop himself in time, and he crashed face first into the asphalt. The scream of rage came from Bakugo as he pushed with his hands against the ground to lift himself up, but Naruto suddenly appeared on top of him and pressed a knee on his back, flattening him against the ground. Naruto did not press hard enough to cause him pain, but his weight made the boy struggle like a madman, unable to breathe. "Let go of me, furry shithead. I'll smash your face when I get up, you hear me? I'll kill you." "I don't know what's your problem, but you should calm the fuck down," Naruto said in annoyance and lightly slammed himself with his butt on Bakugo's back, knocking the wind out of him. Then, still using Bakugo's body as if it was a chair, he started eating from his lunchbox amidst the boy's howls and threats of bodily harm. "My mom put in her effort and loves to make me this lunchbox. What if you spoiled it?" Naruto scolded him as he munched on some rice. "You should never waste food. Other people. I've had enough of you." Bakugo suddenly screamed and it was only thanks to his sharp animalistic instincts that Naruto jumped away in time, evading the explosion by the skin of his teeth. Looking at the boy's twisted face and the explosions cracking around him, Naruto could not help thinking. This guy wants to become a hero. At that moment, Bakugo looked no different than a villain. Crouching down and grabbing a small pebble from the ground, Naruto said. "That explosion could have seriously injured me." His voice was no longer as easygoing as before. "That was the point, you smug bastard." Bakugo hollered, explosions blowing even louder from his palms. "When I'm done with you, you'll be." The sound of an extremely fast object tearing through the air was heard and Bakugo's words died in his throat as he unexpectedly collapsed, his eyes rolled into the back of his head. He was unconscious. On his forehead, a glaring red bruise the size of a 500 yen coin appeared. Naruto had thrown the pebble that he had picked up from the ground with such speed, strength and accuracy that Bakugo had been effectively sniped before he even had the time to react. Still got it, Naruto said, rather pleased with himself. Throwing projectiles, be they kunai or had been the bread and butter of any shinobi in his past life. I can't throw it as fast as in my past life, he thought, a bit disappointed. Some shinobi could throw projectiles with such speed that they were not too different from the speed of bullets of a handgun in this world. But it's still good enough to deal with this idiot. As annoyed as he was with Bakugo for attacking him out of nowhere, Naruto did not want to seriously injure him. Knocking him out was the fastest and least painful method to deal with him. He'll probably have a concussion from that. But he'll recover in no time. Oh my god, you were so freaking awesome, so freaking cool. Midoriya Izuku had stars in his eyes. He had entered into a trance, he was in full fanboy mode. Naruto's victory over Katsuki Bakugo was like something out of a movie. The green-haired boy was not the only one. Most of the boys and the girls that had witnessed the scene were losing their minds at that moment. Holy shit, did you see that? My god, I got it on camera. I got it on camera. But so many witnesses vouching for him that Bakugo had attacked him unprovoked, Naruto himself still had no idea why the boy had suddenly picked a fight with him, he had not gotten into trouble with the principal. In the first place, Bakugo was infamous in the school, this not being the first time he had blown up school furniture with his quirk, nor was it the first time he picked up a fight with someone, not by far. Dude, I wish I was there to see it. I wish I was there to beat the crap out of that dumbass myself. Kiba yelled in annoyance the next day. Seriously, what the hell? I miss one day in 3 months of school, and that's exactly when all the interesting shit happens. Naruto chuckled at Kiba's exuberance. Although he had regained the memories of his past life, he was still Naruto of this current life as well. He still got along well with the dog boy. Why did he try to jump you anyway? Beats me. I was just about to eat my lunch when he suddenly blew up the door of the classroom and lunged at me. I think I know why, Izuku said from the side and explained to them what he thought was the case. So he was jealous that I could get into UA thanks to All Might's recommendation. He attacked me just because of that. Naruto said with a deadpan. That's just my take on it, I am not sure what exactly was the case. I think Kaken can't accept that someone else might be better than him. The green-haired boy said and rubbed the back of his head. Did he forget I beat the crap out of him only a few months ago? Kiba said and snorted. Well, you kinda jumped on him when he didn't expect it. It wasn't a fair fight, Naruto began to say, but Kiba cut him off. So? He did the same to you and still lost. And we both know I could kick your ass too. So that makes me 2 levels above him. Sure you can, Naruto said with a laugh, not taking him seriously. In the first place, he did not care about fighting Kiba. They were friends. By the way, Kiba, Izuku said, my homeroom teacher didn't say anything about you going to the UA together with Kaken and Naruto. Are you really not going to the best hero school in the country? Kiba shrugged his shoulders uncaringly. I don't give a damn about all that hero crap. Once I'm done with school, I'll join the family business. At that, Izuku stopped asking questions altogether. The Inyazuka family was rather feared in their city, and for a good reason. Many unsavory rumors were circulating about them. Izuku preferred not to delve too deep into those waters. Eventually, it was time for them to part and go their separate ways. However, after Kiba left, Izuku continued to walk with Naruto, despite that it would lead to a rather large detour on his way home. After a few minutes of making idle talk, Izuku said. You know, I've always wanted to become a hero. It's been my dream since forever. I have applied to go to the UA too. But I wanted to ask you. Do you think I can become a pro hero too despite not having a quirk? Naruto stopped walking and looked at Izuku, who was similarly looking at him intently. The answer was clear in his mind. It wasn't possible. However, how to break it to his friend was another matter altogether. Imagine I'm a villain, Naruto suddenly said. What? Not giving him an answer, Naruto suddenly grabbed Izuku by his shirt and lifted him in the air as if he was weightless before pushing him rather roughly against the wall of a nearby building. Give me your money. Give me everything you have on you. Izuku was confused. Confused and scared what had suddenly gotten into Naruto. Come on, fight back. Show me what you can do in this situation. Show me what a quirkless person is capable of. When he heard those words, Izuku finally understood what he meant. Taking the widening of the green-haired boy's eyes as a sign that he got his message across, Naruto let Izuku down and smoothed his stretched-out shirt. My quirk isn't even that strong, but you'd still be helpless to deal with me. If you can't deal with someone like me, how would you deal with someone like Bakugo that could probably get strong enough to blow up an entire neighborhood in a few years? What about someone that can move faster than a race car? Or someone like the NO3 hero who can fly? Izuku said, his voice trembling. But you beat Kaken. You beat him with just martial arts and by throwing a piece of rock at him. It was amazing. Could I not do the same too? Could you? Naruto asked back. Izuku became silent at that. He was a scrawny, skinny and unathletic boy. He had never done any sports, nor had he ever gotten into a fight with someone. My mom used to be a judo instructor. She's a black belt. Because of her, I've trained since little in not only judo, but in karate too, and I have recently even started learning mixed martial arts, Naruto said. It was not a lie and Izuku knew that. Before getting pregnant with Naruto, Uzumaki Kushina used to be a judo instructor at a dojo. She retired afterwards and, due to her husband's job being very lucrative, she and Minato decided that it was better for her to stay at home and take care of their baby instead of going back to work and hiring a nanny. That said, it was due to Kushina's martial arts pedigree and Naruto having too much energy for his own good that his parents introduced him to the world of martial arts at a young age. While Naruto had never cared about his studies, when it came to his training, he had always put in the required effort and more. From the beginning, his goal had been to become a pro hero, as it was the dream of 99% of the children his age. Now that he had regained the memories of his previous life, it only further cemented that hard-working aspect of his personality. My quirk isn't all that amazing, but it's not bad either. Still, I've trained my ass off for years, and I still continue to do so because becoming a pro hero is not an easy thing. So when I put in so much effort despite already having a quirk, what can you do to keep up with me? And not just me. Think about Bakugo, what can you do to keep up with him? Do you think you can beat him in a fight? Imagine you've become a pro hero and someone as strong as him, a villain, wants to kill people. What can you do to stop him? Izuku looked at the ground stubbornly even as tears started pooling in his eyes. All Might told me the same when I met him a few weeks ago. Even so, Izuku stopped to wipe his tears with the sleeve of his shirt. I don't need to be the strongest. I just want to help people. I want people to feel safe when I'm around. I want to be like All Might. To say I am here. And immediately make everyone believe that everything is going to be alright. Naruto blew out a long sigh. It pained him to see Izuku cry like that, and it pained him even more when he thought about how impossible his dreams seemed to be. He did not know what to say for a while, and nearly a minute of uncomfortable silence followed, the only sounds heard being Izuku's sobs and the car's engines passing by in the background. Reminds me of how I used to be in my previous life, Naruto thought. Nobody believed me when I said I would become greater than any of the Hokage and make everyone acknowledge me. But then, he shook his head. Still, in some regards, we couldn't be more different. I had the tools to become great. I was from the Uzumaki clan and I had Kurama too. Izuku has nothing. Thinking about his former lifelong companion, Naruto's tail sagged. He missed the grumpy old fox. They may have not been friends for a long time before they were both killed by Kagaya, but Naruto would never forget just how many times they had saved his life. Naruto shook his head to clear up the depressing thoughts and turned his attention back to his friend. UA's entrance exam is in 9 months. Have you prepared for it? He asked. His crying having ceased for the moment, Izuku answered while avoiding eye contact due to being ashamed at how he had cried in front of him. I think I'm almost ready for the written exams. What about the practical exams? There's going to be some fighting for sure. Izuku fiddled with his thumbs as he looked down again. Don't tell me you're relying on getting in through a fluke. The green-haired boy's silence was all the answer he needed. Naruto did not even try to hold back a loud groan. Not only that Izuku did not have a quirk, but he was weak even for a quirkless boy of his age. Yet he hadn't done anything to at least try to bridge the gap between him and the others. Man, you are hopeless. Naruto said and let out another sigh. But I'll help you. I won't let you struggle alone. Izuku looked up at him, startled. You want to help me? We're friends, aren't we? Friends help each other in times of need, Naruto said. I'll take you with me when I train from now on. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we'll go to the gym. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, we'll go to the dojo and you'll learn from one of our sensei there. I will spar with you too after you learn the basics. Training every day. Naruto frowned a little at his reaction. Listen, Izuku. Becoming a hero without a quirk is unheard of. But I'll support you since you're my friend. But if you're not ready to put in 10 times more effort than everyone else, you might as well give up now. You're wasting your time and maybe even ruining your future career options. If I want to become a hero, that wishy-washy attitude won't work. You're either all in or you're out. Izuku showed a pondering look for a while, but then his eyes became resolute and his face brimmed with determination when he said. I'll do it. I'll do everything you tell me. You won't hear even one word of complaint from me. Naruto patted his shoulder and smiled in encouragement. I'll ask mom to make a workout plan for you and a diet plan too. She knows about this stuff much more than I do. I'll give them to you on Monday, okay? So we start on Monday? Izuku asked. Yep. Enjoy your last 2 days of comfortable life to their fullest. Naruto said with a chuckle and waved his hand goodbye. Alright, see you, man, have a nice weekend. Chapter 4 UA Entrance Exam. Four kunai split the air at a speed that made them barely visible to the naked eye before hitting 4 different targets that had been placed randomly in the backyard of his house. Then again. And again. Eventually, Naruto ran out of kunai and went to collect them before starting to practice his aim again. But this time, he threw them while he was running and jumping. Miraculously, every single one of those kunai hit its target perfectly. Several months passed since Naruto had regained the memory of his past life, and ever since that day, he had been doing nothing but going to school, spending time with his parents, and training. He was training to the point of exhaustion every day except for Sundays that were dedicated to resting and recovering. My quirk is not bad, but it has its limitations. I have to maximize what I can do with it. While he had a wealth of experience with fighting, throwing weapons, and even with a bow staff due to his memories, they were mostly theoretical. That's why, nowadays he was training his body until wielding those weapons became second nature to him, to ingrain it in his muscle memory. Training at the dojo is kinda useless these days. I can't wait until I go to the USA. His expertise in taijutsu and the superhuman physical capabilities granted to him by his quirk made sparring with other people unsatisfactory. He was too good and too powerful. He did not gain anything from sparring with average people. He needed to fight against similarly skilled and physically strong people. That's why he was super hyped about UA High, the idea of an institution that would focus on developing his quirk and offering him worthy opponents to train with was very appealing. After placing 2 extra targets in the courtyard, he grabbed 3 kunai with each hand, a total of 6, and threw them. Damn. I missed one. Despite the incredible feat of hitting 5 out of the 6 targets located in different locations by throwing 6 kunai at the same time, he was still dissatisfied with himself. But he did not dwell on it. Picking up another 6 kunai, he threw them once more. Hard work had never betrayed him. Immersed in his training, time flew by without his notice. He was shaken awake from his single-minded training by the voice of his mother. Naruto-chan, dinner is ready. Your father has arrived from work too. Let's eat together. If it had been him from before regaining his memories, he would have gotten annoyed at his mom addressing him that way. But now, he showed a large smile as he said. Sure, just let me pick up my kunai. Give me 2 minutes. Be careful with those knives, Naruto, you could get seriously hurt, Kushina said, frowning her brows in worry when he saw the band-aids wrapped around his fingers. Yes, I will be careful. Don't worry, I won't hurt myself, Naruto said. Your words would be a lot more convincing if your hands weren't full of bandages. Despite that his mother was in the midst of scolding him, his heart was full of warmth. Naruto had never had someone worry about his well-being in his past life. Not for small stuff like that. I didn't cut myself. Look, he said and put down his knife and his fork and peeled off one of the band-aids wrapped around his index finger, revealing an angry red, almost raw-looking line. It looked as if it was caused by something very thin and sharp, something that had dug into the skin of his fingers. It's from a wire, Naruto explained. I've been thinking about ways to trap someone using my knives and wire. But my hands are too soft, I need some time before my skin thickens and I get calluses. I also need to find some wire that's more durable than fishing lines. He said, muttering the last sentence more for himself rather than for them. His father listened to their talk and was very interested. Where did you get those knives by the way? Minato asked. Naruto rubbed the back of his head as he replied. I used my allowance. I asked mom to give me all the money you would normally give me in a month at once. His father put his knife and fork down and looked at Naruto seriously as he said. That money was for you to have fun. If you need things for training, just talk to us. We'll support you as much as we can, Naruto. Before regaining his memories, Naruto used to spend his allowance by going to arcade games together with Inyazuka Kiba and, sometimes, with Izuku Midoriya too. But he had stopped doing that altogether after the sludge villain's attack. Nowadays, he used all that money his parents gave him on buying kunai, strong fishing lines, and, as of late, he had started saving up money to buy smoke bombs. Where did you get all these ideas about using weapons, anyway? Minato asked curiously. I've been thinking about it for some time, especially after that guy, Bakugo, attacked me at school, Naruto said. Oh, the kid with the exploding quirk. Minato said in recognition. Aside from the memories of his past life, Naruto shared everything with his parents. He held no secrets, especially not from his mom. Yep, that one. His quirk is honestly amazing. If he gets into UA and stops being a jerk. Language, Naruto. Kushina chided him lightly. I could totally see him becoming one of the top heroes in the future. Anyway, I beat him easily because I know how to fight. But if I don't keep on improving, in a few years, I won't be his match. I have to work hard to stay one step ahead of everyone. Although months had passed since his parents noticed for the first time the drastic changes in their son, there were still moments when Naruto surprised them with his maturity. So I've been thinking of ways to close the gap between me and other people that have stronger quirks, ways to take full advantage of my quirk's superhuman strength, agility, and dexterity. I got this idea from the stories about ninjas from the Middle Ages. Minato, you should see how good he is with his throwing knives. Kushina gushed, suddenly going from being worried about Naruto getting hurt in training to speaking in excitement about his skill with the knives. As a martial arts practitioner herself, she could appreciate the amount of effort and dedication Naruto was putting into his training. I'm serious. He can throw 6 knives at once and hit 6 different targets every time. It's incredible. She's exaggerating, I'm not hitting all of them every time, Naruto mumbled, slightly embarrassed at her praise. Finishing eating, Minato grabbed his plates and stood up. After putting them into the sink, he came back to the table and said. I'm proud of how hardworking you are even after knowing that you've already been accepted into UA High. Keep at it, Naruto. Your mom and I will support you to the best of our ability. Make a list with the tools and the equipment you need and give it to me tomorrow, okay? Your dad has quite a good job so you don't have to worry about the expenses as long as you don't want some crazy stuff, the blond man said and put a hand on his son's head, rubbing it softly. Maybe it was a side effect of having a fox quirk, or maybe it was simply because he was starved for his parents' affection, or maybe because of both. Naruto closed his eyes and leaned into the head pat, a quiet purring sound coming from his throat as his father gently scratched the top of his head between his fluffy fox ears. Kushina giggled at the scene and grinned widely. Although she wanted Naruto to never go through a similar incident again, she could not help thinking deep within her heart that maybe the sludge villain's attack had been a blessing in disguise for their family. Before that, Naruto had been a rebellious teenager, disrespectful towards both her and his father, and he was rarely at home at all during the day, spending his time either at the dojo on the days when he trained or haunting the neighborhood with his friends in the days when he did not get to the dojo. Naruto showing his affection towards them so openly had not happened in years. Unknowingly, Kushina's eyes watered and Naruto just happened to look at her at that moment. Are you okay, Mom? He asked in worry when he saw her on the verge of crying. She stood up from her chair, came behind him and wrapped her arms around him. I'm more than okay. I'm just so happy. Not one to be left out, Minato also joined his wife and son in a family hug. The sweeter his time with his parents was, the more restless he was becoming. The happier he was, the more worried he became and the more his love for his parents grew, the more his urgency to become stronger was growing as well. Those contrasting feelings made him roll in his bed listlessly for hours that night. One moment his heart was flooded with happiness at the thought of how much his parents cared for him and loved him, and, in the next moment, he would curl into a ball and clench his fists in worry due to knowing that he was not strong enough yet to protect them should a powerful villain attack them. Eventually, he stood up from his bed and, putting on a pair of sneakers, Naruto opened the window of his bedroom before jumping out. Despite falling from a height of over 5 meters, he did not make even the slightest sound when he landed on the ground. Next, he broke into a mad dash, his body appearing as little more than a phantom in the darkness of the night. He jumped on top of the 2 meters tall concrete fence of his courtyard effortlessly, and from there, he launched himself on the rooftop of one of the neighboring houses, once again not causing even the slightest tremor or noise when he landed. He started shinobi jumping from one rooftop to another with such grace and confidence that it would leave Parker enthusiasts breathless from awe. The closer he got to the center of the city, the higher the buildings were becoming, and Naruto was forced to start climbing up the walls. However, while he did not have chakra and he could not use the tree-walking technique of his past life, the superhuman agility and dexterity he possessed thanks to his fox quirk made him look as if he was defying gravity while he was running straight up the wall and jumping up using the tiniest footholds he could find. Furthermore, that big and fluffy foxtail at his back that he was usually annoyed with due to how much time it took him to wash it when he took baths was actually proving its use at this moment, giving him an increased degree of control of his body while he was in the air, allowing him to even change the direction of his jump or the speed of his landing. Several months later. The wide and tall amphitheater-style room was filled to the brim with children in their mid-teens. At the front of the room, a screen as wide and tall as the room was playing various images, assisting the man standing on the stage and explaining to everyone the contents of the exam ahead. That's right, it was the Hero Course Orientation exam. As it says in the application requirements, you will be conducting mock urban battles after this. You can bring whatever you want with you. After the presentation, you'll head to the specified battle center, okay? Standing in front of the enormous gates of the city-like battle center, Izuku Midoriya gripped tightly a 2 meters long metal staff in his hands. It's time. I will show everyone that even a quirkless person like me can do it. I'll give everything I got from my training at the dojo over the past 9 months. I won't disappoint Naruto, I will show him that he didn't waste his time and effort helping me train. I won't disappoint the expectations of my sensei either. I will become the hero I've always dreamt of being. While Naruto did not personally train Izuku on a daily basis, they did spar at least once a week, especially after 3 months into Izuku's training, when the green-haired boy had gotten the basic movements and training mentality down. He still vividly remembered Naruto's advice. You're short and you're physically weak. Even if you went to the gym for years, it would still not be enough to keep up with those people that have quirks that give them superhuman strength. So you have to keep that in mind, man. You need to know your limits and where you stand. That's why I think it would be great for you to learn how to use a weapon first instead of hand-to-hand fighting. I recommend you use a bow staff. I'm using one myself too. As a typical nerdy boy, his first thought was katana. But once he got home and started thinking in more depth about his choice of weapon, after weighing in the pros and cons of several different weapons, the Izuku decided on learning how to use a bow staff too. For a complete noob like him, swords were actually not that great, especially not katanas. In contrast, using a staff made up for what he was missing. A staff would grant him a reach advantage over his opponents, and it would let him generate significant power with his strikes. After 9 months of arduous training, Izuku had grown a few inches taller, his body had gained quite a bit of muscle, and, most importantly, he had way much more self-confidence than before. A sudden yell startled all the boys and the girls who had been staring open-mouthed at the city-like battle center through its wide-open gates. What's wrong? There are no real countdowns in real fights. Run. Run. The die had been cast, you know. As one, the group of children broke into a mad dash and spread through the city. Izuku was among them too. Only a few moments later, a 2 or 3 meters tall robot standing on a one-wheel foot made a turn and lunged at him. It was the type that was worth 1 point. "I'll kill you," came the robotic voice, but Izuku did not even flinch. Thanks to the hundreds of hours spent training with his staff and sparring against Naruto and his sensei at the dojo, Izuku had gotten used to being in a fight. Just as the robot swung its right arm at him in a wild cross, Izuku ducked under the swing and clenching his hands on the end of his bow staff with as much strength as he could, he swung at the robot himself too. The other end of the staff smashed into the shoulder of the robot with a loud sound of metal colliding, making its body shake and momentarily disturbing its balance. The robot only had 1 foot. But the result was far from what Izuku had expected. Against a regular human, that staff strike would have smashed their shoulder to bits or, at the very least, dislocated it. Against this robot, however, it proved to be useless. Not only that the robot had not been harmed in the least, but the rebound force also traveled back through the staff, and Izuku's hands become numb from pain, almost losing their grip on his weapon. It was then that the reality of the situation finally dawned on Izuku for the first time, just how big was his disadvantage due to being quirkless. He finally understood that All Might did not just bash his dream of becoming a hero for no reason. The gap in power between quirkless people and those with strong quirks was as large as the distance between heaven and earth. Despite that, his eyes started swimming with tears of frustration. Izuku gritted his teeth stubbornly. "Even so, I won't give up. I just have to work harder. I will train harder. 1 step at a time. And the first step now is beating this robot in front of me." His mind regained its calm, and he jumped back a few steps, putting some distance between him and the robot. But the robot's AI did not seem to be very high as it just charged back at the boy in front of him like a bulldozer, doing the same type of attack, swinging its punch again, only that it was the other arm this time. "Your body may be too sturdy and strong for me to damage it. But what about that camera on your head?" Izuku thought, and, once he evaded the robot's wild punch again, he swung his staff from his back, overhead, and let out a cry as he smashed it against the robot's head with all of his strength. The end of the metallic staff just happened to hit the red lens on the robot's face that served as its eye, breaking it into smithereens. Unable to see anything anymore, the robot started flailing its arms aimlessly before eventually losing its equilibrium when it bumped into a light pole and fell down. 1 point. Izuku said and let out a scream of triumph. "I can do it. Even without a quirk, I can do it." That small victory lit a flame in his heart and his confidence soared. Nevertheless, the mock battle exam lasted only 10 minutes. By the time the exam ended, reality hit Izuku like a train. Only 3 points. He had only managed to defeat 3 robots that were worth 1 point each. Try as he might, he could not stop the tears that suddenly flooded his eyes. He was not dumb, he did not need to wait for a week or two until he received the official results to know that he did not make it. He had heard other students talk about getting at least 10 points, while there were some with particularly strong quirks that had gotten even over 50 points. Izuku's prediction turned out to be true several days later when a letter arrived at his residence. He had failed. Attached to the letter was also a file that showed the rankings of the entrance exam participants. While he had done well in the written exam, his practical exam had one of the lowest scores among all. He had failed to join the hero course of the UA High. In spite of his feelings of despair and depression, Izuku grabbed his phone and, upon scrolling through his contacts list, he tapped on Naruto's name, initiating a voice call. Even if he had not passed the exam, Naruto had devoted so much of his time and effort to training him. He had to at least tell him the results of his exam. He owed Naruto that much. "Hey Izuku. What's up?" The moment he heard Naruto's cheerful voice, the tears and the sadness that he had been holding burst out all at once. Breaking into loud sobs, Izuku cried out. "I failed. I'm sorry, Naruto, you spent so much time and effort to help me, but I still failed. I'm so sorry." Outside of his door, Izuku's mother was crying her eyes out too, her heart breaking at the pain she heard in her son's voice. Chapter 5 Combat Training. Due to his mother fussing around him that morning, Naruto was running late on his first day at UA High. Even so, he couldn't bring himself to feel annoyed. In spite of being in a rush, he still gave his mom a hug and bumped fists with his father before finally leaving. Seeing as it was daytime, he could not just willy-nilly start shinobi jumping on the rooftops. It was against the law for people to use their quirks in public. Even if his quirk was mutant type, if the patrolling heroes or police officers saw him doing something as crazy and dangerous as that, he would undoubtedly be stopped, which in turn would make him get to school even later. Luckily, he managed to arrive before the bell rang for the start of the first period. What a big-ass door, he thought when he saw the door of his classroom. With a height of over 3 meters and a width of over 2 meters, the classroom's door looked as if it had been designed with the purpose of allowing people of all sizes to enter it unhindered, being considerate of those who had gigantic physiques due to their quirks. "Don't put your feet on the desk." He heard a voice coming from beyond the door, covering all the other noises in the classroom. "Don't you think that's rude to the UA upperclassmen and the people who made the desk?" "Nope. What junior high did you go to, your side character?" Another voice replied rudely, one that was unmistakably familiar in his ears. It was Bakugo Katsuki's voice. With a sigh of annoyance at the thought of having ended up in the same classroom as that guy, Naruto no longer waited outside, his curiosity to see how their conversation would develop having died down. In his eyes, Bakugo was like an evil mixture between Kiba and Sasuke Uchiha of his previous life, taking on the worst character traits of those two. Kiba's aggressiveness and bullying habits together with Sasuke's arrogance and pride. It's like a salad of cancer and AIDS. How is this guy in a hero school again? Deciding to stop thinking about him, he pushed open the door of the classroom. At that moment, all the chatter and even the verbal spat between Bakugo and the other guy instantly died down, and 17 heads turned to look at him at the same time. "Yo." Naruto said and raised a hand in greeting. 3 seconds of uncomfortable silence followed. But then, the class erupted into loud chatter and exclamations. A well-built and fit body, average height, sun-kissed blonde hair, a rather cute face with 3 pairs of whisker marks on his cheeks, adorable fluffy fox ears on his head, and a bushy golden fox tail swaying slowly at his back from the first moment he stepped in. Naruto became the focus of their attention. Seconds later, he found himself surrounded from all sides by nearly 10 teens, all of them talking to him excitedly at once. I can understand the girls' reaction, but what the heck is with the guys? Thanks to his current life, Naruto was not oblivious to how cute his fox quirk made him appear in the eyes of most girls, so he understood why the 3 girls, one with shoulder-length brown hair, one with pink hair and pink skin, and one with strange-looking ears, would be clamoring around him. But he could not understand why the boys were so hyped about talking to him. There were no less than 6 guys vying for his attention at that moment. "Hey. I'm Ijiro Kirishima. Nice to meet you, man." A red-haired boy said with a grin and raised his hand for a handshake. It was when the second boy introduced himself that Naruto finally understood the reason for his passionate reception. "I'm Kaminari. Hey, is it true that All Might recommended you to UA?" Once the boy who introduced himself as Kaminari asked that question, chaos ensued. It was only the arrival of their homeroom teacher that put a stop to it. In spite of how gloomy and no-nonsense their homeroom teacher appeared to be, Naruto decided that he liked him the moment that he saw that he took the class outside, on the field, to do a quirk assessment test. "This is perfect. That's what I'm here for, to learn more about my quirk, to train, to become stronger." Once he explained what the test was all about, the teacher called out Bakugo. "Bakugo, you finished at the top of the practical exam, right?" "Yes." "In junior high, what was your best result for softball throw?" 67 meters, the boy replied. "Then, try doing it with your quirk," the teacher said. "You can do whatever you want as long as you stay in the circle. Give it all you got." The blonde took the ball from the teacher's hand and then went into the indicated circle. Letting out a scream, he threw it with everything he had. I.e. The ball shot in the air with an explosion, as if it had been launched from the barrel of a cannon. When the results of Bakugo's throw came out, the class's excitement grew. It was then that it finally sank in for them that, at this school, they were allowed to use their quirks all they wanted. But their homeroom teacher was just as quick to put a damper on their mood. It looks fun, huh? You have 3 years to become a hero. Will you have an attitude like that the whole time? For the next 3 years, UA will do all it can to give you one hardship after another. This isn't a child's play. Find the upper limit of your quirks and then, overcome them. Go beyond. Plus Ultra. 1. Uzumaki Naruto. 2. Momoyaoi Rozu. 3. Shoto Todoroki. 4. Katsuki Bakugo. 5. Tenya Iida. Seeing Naruto ranking first on their teacher's hologram ranking list, his classmates involuntarily took a second look at him. As expected from someone recommended by All Might. Was what most of them were thinking. He had taken the first or second place in most of the tests where someone's quirk did not offer them a landslide victory, for example, Achako Uraraka's zero-gravity quirk throwing the ball to infinity. Nevertheless, while the students were all thinking about their scores and what their ranking meant, the teacher's eyes were narrowed in thought. While everyone else believed that All Might recommended Naruto to UA due to his capabilities, the reality was a bit different. His control over his fox quirk is rather impressive for a novice. He moves like someone who has trained in martial arts as well, I can see that. However, I still don't see it. I can't imagine how someone with a fox quirk could have killed that sludge villain. That villain's sludge was almost like a counter to most of the quirks, relying on dealing physical damage. All Might had not hidden his intentions from the principal of UA, and he had even brought Shota Izawa into the secret too, once he found out that he was going to be Naruto's homeroom teacher. It was so they could better keep an eye on the boy and study his character in detail. In spite of the boring English class at the beginning of the second day, the students regained their vitality and hype once the bell rang. The reason for that was simple. The No. 1 hero, the strongest and most popular hero in the country, All Might himself was going to teach the next class. If hearing what was the focus of the class combat training was not enough to make them burst with excitement, All Might telling them that their hero costumes were ready had set everyone on fire. It was pandemonium. Naruto was swept off by everyone's enthusiasm too as he took a look at his hero costume. It was rather simple and it looked quite similar to what he used to wear in his previous life. A pair of black and orange pants and a jacket of similar colors that had a fierce 9-tailed fox painted on its back, 2 pouches filled with kunai were strapped at his thighs, and a utility belt was wrapped around his waist, its numerous pockets carrying several smoke grenades, wire, and other miscellaneous ninja tools. Lastly, a white and orange Anbu-style fox mask was covering his face, a mask that had a respiratory system built in to protect him from harmful gases. The jacket with the 9-tailed fox painted on its back and the Anbu-style fox mask were a tribute to his former friend and lifelong companion, the 9-tailed demon fox. To show his respect for him, Naruto had even chosen his hero alias after Kyuubi's name. Kurama. Naruto's hero name was Kurama. Most of the time, fighting villains takes place outside, but if you look at the total numbers, atrocious villains appear indoors at a higher rate. Imprisonment, house arrest, backroom deals in this society filled with heroes, truly intelligent villains hide in the shadows. All Might began to say once everyone had put on their hero costumes. For this class, you'll be split into villains and heroes and fight 2-on-2 indoor battles. In his words, the class started throwing one question after another. In spite of his inexperience as a teacher, All Might patiently explained to them everything they needed to know and then made them draw lots to separate them into teams. Once the teams were made and lots were drawn, Naruto let out a groan. Oi, is this for real? It was as if the universe was conspiring against him by pitting him and Bakugo against each other. For their first class of combat training, their teacher, All Might, had come up with a simple scenario. One team would take on the role of villains, while the other team would take on the role of heroes. The villains had to protect a dummy nuke and prevent the heroes from capturing it. As for the heroes, their purpose was to either defeat the villains or capture the nuke. In contrast to Naruto's annoyance, his opponent was literally exploding with anticipation. Finally, Bakugo screamed, flames and smoke coming out of his palms from excitement. You won't be able to run this time, Uzumaki. I will pay you back tenfold for that humiliation half a year ago. I'll crush you, I'll break you, I'll blow you up to pieces, you damn bastard. According to the drawn lots, Uzumaki Naruto and Kyoka Jiro were going to be the villain team, while Bakugo Katsuki and Mineta Minoru were going to act as the hero team. All Might declared the start of the battle exercise. Villain team, go in first and set up. In 5 minutes, the hero team will break in and the battle will start. This is gonna be so good. A blond boy said in excitement, electricity sparking in his hands. The number one in the practical exam versus the one who was recommended by All Might. This is bad, I'm shivering. Amanari was not the only one super hyped about the fight. The rest of the boys and the girls were just as enthused. It gets even better when you know what happened a few months ago. It was all over social media. Uzumaki beat up Bakugo so one-sidedly without using his quirk. I even downloaded that video on my phone, it was that crazy. Kaminari further hyped everyone up. As for All Might, he was just as interested in the matchup as everyone else there. Most people showed their true colors when they were in a tough battle. All Might wanted to see exactly who Uzumaki Naruto was. Even after all this time, he had not forgotten his mistake letting a criminal as powerful as the sludge villain escape and nearly kill a kid. But just like he had not forgotten his mistake, All Might could also not forget about the golden dome of light that had killed the sludge villain and destroyed 2 tall apartment buildings too. Was it another person back then? I arrived there only a few seconds after the light faded away, I would have seen if there was another person. But if there was nobody else, that means that young Naruto had killed the villain. However, everyone has only quirk. Unless All for One was somehow involved with him. It was a bit of a stretch even in his mind, but All Might could not easily ignore the matter. All for One had been like a shadow over his life for decades. He had killed his master and countless other innocent people, and he had destroyed his career as a hero too. I hope young Uzumaki has nothing to do with All for One. But even if he is somehow involved, I hope it is not too late. He is just a young boy. There is still time for him to change and turn his life around for the best. Bringing Naruto into UA High was a way for All Might to hit multiple birds with one stone. In a way, he was reimbursing Naruto for his mistake, he was keeping an eye on a potential asset of his archenemy, Afo, while also having the chance to properly teach and guide the young boy to become a hero, eliminating a potential hazard. He hoped that he would gain some insight into Naruto's true character after this battle. "Hey, I'm Naruto," he said, introducing himself to his teammate for the first time. Hyokujiro had been among the 3 girls and 6 boys that had crowded around him the day before when he had entered the classroom for the first time. Seeing Naruto's earnest smile and his outstretched hand, the girl smiled shyly, the earphone jacks of her ears curling up. Seemingly not noticing the girl's embarrassment, Naruto continued. 5 minutes isn't a long time, so we have to introduce ourselves fast. I have a fox quirk. I can do pretty much everything a fox can. I'm very good at close combat. My eyesight, sense of smell and hearing are great as well. Quickly getting over her shyness, Kyoka said. My quirk is earphone jack, and the jack-like lobes of her ears raised in front of his face. If I plug these into the wall or into the ground, I can hear sounds from very far away distances. I can do something similar to echolocation. Echo what? Naruto asked in confusion. The girl touched the lobes of her ears as she explained to him. I can amplify and release the sound of my heartbeats to detect people and things based on the vibration they will make at the contact with the sound waves. Naruto thought for a few seconds before saying. That looks like a very useful quirk for spying and scouting. I can also amplify the sound of my heartbeat so loud that I can destroy even walls with the sound intensity. So I can attack too if it comes down to it, Kyoka continued, secretly pleased that Naruto was not underestimating her quirk. I see, Naruto nodded sagely. Then, he changed the subject abruptly. Bakugo and I went to the same junior high. And he's bearing a grudge against me. Even if the bomb is in front of his eyes, he'll probably still go after me to prove he's stronger. Yikes, why? She asked. I might or might have not kicked his butt badly a few months ago. The two of them started snickering together. I say we take advantage of Bakugo's grudge on me and lead him away from the bomb. What do you think? Can I deal with the other guy? Sounds good to me. As for Mineta, his quirk isn't that strong in a fight. He can throw sticky balls from his hair. He shouldn't be a problem, the girl said. Alright then, let's do this, Naruto said with a grin and raised his fist in front of her. Understanding the gesture, Kyoga returned his grin as they bumped their fists together. According to the plan, Naruto quickly left the room and jumped down the stairs, completely skipping all the steps, straight to the ground floor. I can hear them, they've entered through the door already, came Kyoka's voice from the communication device installed close to Naruto's ears. One of them, the shorter one, Mineta, went to the right corridor. Bakugo is walking straight ahead. Naruto's sensitive hearing had picked up the sounds of their footsteps too, but that was all. Kyoka's quirk was better in this regard, as she was able to even detect their exact location just by sound. Thank you, I'll get back Yagu. Contact me right away if you have troubles with the other guy. Roger. Saying that, Naruto grabbed a kunai from one of the pouches strapped at his right thigh and, using his superhuman strength, he stabbed it into the wall around 30 centimeters above the floor. After that, it took less than 3 seconds for him to tie a very thin thread from the loop at the end of the weapon's handle. He repeated the same action on the other wall of the corridor he was in and slipped the wire through the loop of the second kunai's handle as well. His preparations done, he ran to meet Bakugo straight on, following Kyoka's instructions through their communication device. The very instant that Naruto entered his line of sight, it was as if someone pulled out the pin of a grenade. Hands raised in front of him, Bakugo screamed at the top of his lungs. I.e. The violent vortex of fire exploded forth, scorching the walls of the corridor black and incinerating everything in its path. The power of Bakugo's explosion quirk was a sight to behold. However, the target of his rage was nowhere to be found. It had escaped unscathed. Uzumaki. Bakugo roared, spittle flying out of his mouth. Face me. Fight me. Don't run away, you cowardly bastard. Prime River Naruto sing-sang mockingly and laughed as he sprinted away, making sure to be one section of the maze-like corridor ahead of Bakugo at all times, not letting him take aim at him with his explosion quirk. The range of Bakugo's quirk granted him an overwhelming advantage in such a closed-off space. Naruto would have no space to dodge the explosions whatsoever if his explosion filled up the entire corridor. For now, his only choice was to avoid a frontal confrontation. Bakugo's quirk is so powerful. Many of the students said in awe as they watched the scene of the explosion engulfing the entire corridor and destroying the video camera in the process as well. It was only when the fox boy appeared on the recording of another camera that they breathed out a sigh of relief that he hadn't been grievously injured or worse. It also made them realize the severity of the situation and how heavy the responsibility was on their shoulders whenever they used their powers. One wrong move or a bit of bad luck and they could kill someone by mistake if they did not hold back. This is insane. Sensei, is Bakugo trying to kill him? Kaminari complained. However, All Might did not reprimand him. Here I am, worrying over young Uzumaki being a villain in the making, yet young Bakugo seems even more problematic than him. The No.1 hero zoned out as he started debating in his mind if he should temporarily stop the exercise and reinforce for everyone that they are not allowed to seriously harm their fellow classmates, or if she should wait until the end of this current battle. He had thought that that was common sense for them to hold back against their fellow classmates. He had not expected Bakugo to unleash his quirk like that, with no regard for his opponent's safety or life. However, before he could come to a decision, he heard the rest of the class cry out in surprise and he returned his attention to the screen. Having completely lost all sense of control, Bakugo pointed his arms behind him and the explosion from his palms propelled him forward like a rocket. I'll catch you, Uzumaki. He screamed in glee, greatly invigorated at the fact that he had almost caught up to Naruto, having managed to catch a glimpse of Naruto's foxtail just as he turned to the right towards another corridor. You're done for when I get my hands on you. Hahaha. Ooh. His laughter transformed into a cry of surprise after an almost invisible white thread had suddenly risen up from the floor and caught his feet. Unable to stop the momentum of his flight, the thread made him stumble and fall on his face. It was a testament to his incredible reflexes and quick reaction that Bakugo managed to bring a hand in front of him just in time to create an explosion. That explosion made his body flip in the air and he somehow regained his balance, eventually landing on the floor, on his feet. But just as he was celebrating his momentary success, a sudden shout reached his ears. Lariat! Naruto screamed and, having only just barely landed on the floor after his flip in midair, Bakugo was unable to react. The fox boy's arm slammed into Bakugo's throat and blasted him back as if he had been hit by a truck. It was the favorite Taijutsu move of the fourth Raikage and Killer Bee from Naruto's past life. Naruto's bursts of speed for short distances were so great due to his fox quirk's superhuman agility that even Tenyu Iida had not been able to beat him in the 50 meters dash test from the day before. Bakugo had never stood a chance the moment that he had been destabilized by the kunai and thread simple trap. The force of the hit not only that it hurled Bakugo all the way to the back of the corridor, but it had also knocked him out cold too. Nevertheless, Naruto was not done with him. Grabbing 6 kunai from the 2 pouches strapped at his thighs, 3 in each one of his hands, he threw them with as much strength as he could. Outside the building, the rest of the class and even All Might cried out in shock at Naruto's actions. Had he gone mad? Was he actually trying to kill Bakugo, only for them to be shocked one more time when they saw the result of his actions? The 6 kunai blades accurately pinned Bakugo's body to the wall, stabbing through his clothes and into the concrete, but not harming him in the least. Holy shit. Did you see that? The boys and the girls were losing their minds at the godlike display of knife-throwing skills. All Might himself was gaping at the scene in disbelief too. What was that? For real, what was that? It's like something out of a movie. Just how many years did he practice throwing knives to get that insane skill with him? He had spent decades fighting crime and facing all kinds of super-powered individuals, yet it was the first time he had seen this kind of martial skill at someone, and it was a 15-year-old kid no less. Having finished off Bakugo, Naruto broke into a run back to the top floor where the dummy nuke that they were supposed to protect was located. "Ioka, I defeated Bakugo. What's the situation with you?" Already that was fast. Due to the deafening sounds made by Bakugo's explosions, Kyoka had stopped using her earphone jack quirk lest her ears start bleeding. Having gotten the figurative green light to use her quirk again, she inserted her ear jack back into the wall. "Vegeta is only one floor away. He should get here in less than a minute." "Hold on, I'm on my way. Don't try to defeat him, we can't afford to make mistakes right now. Just keep him busy and don't let him touch the bomb, no matter what. Don't worry, leave it to me." Ending the conversation, Naruto started jumping entire flights of stairs at a time, resembling a rabbit much more than a fox at that moment. His efforts did not go to waste seeing as he arrived just in time to see the tiny boy open the door of the villain's room. But just as Mineta opened the door, an absurdly loud sound wave caught him fully and blasted him all across the corridor. However, Naruto did not get a chance to see the final outcome of that attack. Bright red blood burst from his fluffy fox ears as his eardrums ruptured and he collapsed on the floor unconscious, his eyes rolled into the back of his head. To someone with a sense of hearing as sensitive as his, Kyoka's powerful sound attack had been deadly. Chapter 6 Beyond the Limits. By the time Naruto woke up, the sun was about to disappear beyond the horizon. It was evening. Letting out a yawn, he closed back his eyes and attempted to turn on the other side when a sharp voice of an old woman slammed into his eardrums. "You've slept enough already. Get up, classes are over. It's time for you to go home." "No," he moaned and covered his head with the pillow. "Don't act like a baby now, you're going to be a pro hero, aren't you?" Alright, he said in annoyance and sat up. But when he saw two people waiting at his bedside, he blinked at them owlishly. "What are you two doing here?" Sitting on a stool next to his bed were a boy with curly green hair and a girl with short dark hair and something that looked like earphone jacks on the lobes of her ears. They were none other than Midoriya Izuku and Kyoka Jiro. Before Izuku could reply, the girl quickly stood up from her chair and bowed at an almost 90 degrees angle. "I'm terribly sorry, I've never thought the attack would catch you too. I'm so sorry." Naruto quickly waved his hands in front of his face to dispel her worries when he heard her trembling voice. It looked as if the girl was on the verge of crying. Don't worry. I'm at fault too, I should have seen that coming. I should have built my suit with a countermeasure for it. But I forgot, haha," he said and rubbed the back of his head. Regaining the memories of his past life, Naruto could still vividly recall his first Chunin exam, specifically, his fight against Inyazuka Kiba. Back then, Kiba was a much better fighter than him. The genin Kiba was so fast and so strong that Naruto wasn't even allowed the 2 seconds needed to make the hand seals for casting a shadow clone technique. It looked like he was losing the fight and quite badly at that until he farted. And he farted just as Kiba came in his proximity. For the Inyazuka's enhanced sense of smell, it had been devastating. Kiba lost that fight because of a freaking fart. That said, Naruto had learned from that experience and designed his suit to prevent such a scenario from happening to him as well. His fox-like Anbu mask was equipped with a respiratory system that would protect him from harmful gases. But, in typical Naruto-ish fashion, he did not think everything through. He had forgotten about his enhanced sense of hearing. And he had paid for it. "No, this is unacceptable," Kyoka said, shaking her head. "I hurt my teammates. When we go out in the field, this could be fatal." He tried to pacify her, but she was inconsolable. After apologizing for half a dozen times more, the girl bowed one more time and left. "I heard you fought against Kakin again. Tell me more," Izuku asked while he and Naruto were going home together. "Bakugo's quirk is really strong, but he's so easy to rile up. I made him chase after me and lured him into a corridor where I had prepared a trap. Nothing amazing, just 2 kunai with a thread tied to the loops of their handles. When he flew in, I pulled on the thread and made him stumble. He didn't even have the chance to react before I knocked him out with a lariat," he said smugly. "I can't wait to rub it in his face tomorrow, he's going to. What are you doing?" Naruto suddenly stopped and asked. At some point during his tale, Izuku had taken out a notebook and started writing down his words. "Well, you know. I often write down information about all the amazing heroes and strong quirks I see." Looking at what was written on the notebook's cover, Naruto did not know whether to laugh or cry. "You're noting down the story of me beating Bakugo in your notebook for becoming a pro hero?" He cleared his throat and fanned his face with his right hand. He did love showing off in front of others, but Izuku fanboying over his fight against Bakugo embarrassed him. "Sheesh, you're making me blush, man. And never mind my fight with Bakugo, tell me, how is the general education course treating you?" Izuku shrugged his shoulders. "I guess it's not bad. It's not any different than junior high. We only have normal classes." They became silent after that, walking shoulder to shoulder on the sidewalk, with Izuku looking at his feet and Naruto gawking aimlessly at the sky, his hands behind his head. "I won't give up," Izuku said eventually. "I understand now. After failing the practice exam, I see how big is the difference between me and those who have quirks. But I still won't give up. Not all villains have super powerful quirks. And I don't necessarily need to have a quirk to save someone's life." Before quirks appeared in the world, firemen and policemen were still saving people without any superhuman powers. I can do it too. Then why not just apply for that? Why not become a policeman or a fireman? Naruto asked. It would be much easier. Policemen and firemen aren't as important as they used to be. Nowadays, heroes are the ones who usually get to the scene first. They're the ones who solve the situation. Policemen and firemen work mostly as the cleaning up crew after heroes, Izuku explained. When they were about to part ways, Naruto stopped and looked into Izuku's eyes. In spite of the boy's timid and shy disposition, he could see the fierce determination in his gaze, the stubbornness to never give up. It reminded him of himself when he was younger, in his previous life. "There might be a way for you to shorten the gap between you and those with quirks," Naruto said. Izuku's eyes widened but he kept silent, drinking every single word that came out of his mouth. "Have you heard of hysterical strength?" he asked. "And no, what is that?" "It sounds bad," the green-haired boy said and gulped. Instead of continuing to walk, Naruto led Izuku to the side and they sat on the short garden fence in front of a nearby building. He frowned and thought for a few moments, trying to find the right words to explain to Izuku what he meant. "You know that our body usually can't use 100% of its strength. We have some sort of limiters, we limit our strength to protect and preserve our bodies. But there are times when even regular people can do superhuman things. Have you ever heard of the woman who lifted a car weighing a few hundred kilos in her desperation to save her child? It's a classic example." At Izuku's wordless nod of affirmation, Naruto continued. "You've probably heard many stories like that. Some woman lifting a car to save her father that was trapped underneath, someone breaking through a concrete wall to save people from a collapsed building and so on. These aren't just stories, they are real. There are moments when even regular people can do incredible things." Naruto made a pause on purpose before saying. "I could help you with that, train you until you can squeeze out every single bit of your power." But he said loudly when Izuku started to show signs of excitement, "You gotta understand that our bodies have these limiters for a reason. If you make use of the hysterical strength too often, you will suffer. If you do it rarely, you'll only feel exhausted and probably tear your muscles. But if you abuse your hysterical strength you could end up disabled for life or, worse, dead." Midoriya gulped at Naruto's words, understanding the severity of the consequences. "Now that you know the danger, do you wish to learn?" Despite the risks, Izuku's answer was instantaneous. "Yes. I can't say for sure that you'll be able to turn on your hysterical strength anytime you want. It's something that even I can't do easily despite that I've trained for months. But if I get you to experience it a few times, you will become more used to it. You'll have a bigger chance to surpass your limits in a crisis," Naruto explained. "But you need you to promise me, Izuku. Promise me you won't use this skill easily. You are my friend. I don't want you to end up becoming a vegetable. This is only to be used in a matter of life and death, it's going to be your ace in the sleeve to turn a hopeless situation around." In spite of Izuku's promises, Naruto still felt uneasy about his decision to fully support him like that. On one hand, he wanted to trust in his friend and help him achieve his dream of becoming a pro hero. That's what friends were for, to help and support each other. But, on the other hand, Naruto was no longer as naive as he had once been in his past life. Having the memories of 2 lives and witnessing the death of his old world had matured him beyond his physical age. He knew that there were limits to what one could achieve through hard work alone. What if he gets himself killed? Mercy is not in a villain's character. What if he meets a bloodthirsty villain with a powerful quirk? He cared about Izuku, and he was worried about his future as a quirkless person. That's why Naruto decided to even go as far as to teach him something as dangerous as tapping into the potential of his body and surpassing his limits by activating his hysterical strength. The next day at school, Eraser had discussed everyone's performance in the combat training class from the day before. Giving praise where it was deserved and admonishing someone when it was needed, Shota Izawa was a strict but fair teacher. Eventually, he also addressed the elephant in the room, namely the team kill incident from the very first fight between Bakugo plus Mineta team versus Naruto plus Kyoka team. He started off with Kyoka. "Using your quirk to locate the enemy was smart. But what you did later on, not so much." The girl looked down, unable to meet anyone's eyes at that moment. In spite of her looks and the seemingly flippant attitude that she had in her daily life, Kyoka was a conscientious and kind person. The fact that she had injured her own teammate, nobody was more upset about it than her. "Ma, in the first place, the two of you were a bad matchup. It was unlucky for someone with your quirk to be paired up together with Uzumaki who has an enhanced sense of hearing. But that is a scenario that is quite likely to happen down the line if you become a pro hero. There will be times when you will have to team up with all kinds of heroes. You need to learn how to use your quirk responsibly in order to not become a liability for your team. Yes, sensei, Kyoka said. Bakugo, as Awa suddenly said, making the boy in question look at him intently. Frankly speaking, in such a confined space, your quirk gave you the complete advantage against Uzumaki. Not only that you could engulf the entire corridor in an explosion to keep him at bay, but, with his sensitive hearing, Uzumaki wouldn't be able to get close to you if you kept causing explosions due to their loud sounds. You should have just gone directly for the objective and let him come at you. But instead of taking the time to formulate a plan, you let your emotions cloud your judgment. I don't know what happened between the two of you before you came to UA, but I don't care either. Learn how to control your emotions. You're very talented, so don't act like a kid. I know, Bakugo replied grumpily, but his serious-looking face let Aizawa know that he took his words to heart. As for you, Uzumaki, your planning and methods were flawless. You made use of your strengths and created a scenario where you could take advantage of them. But as smart as you were in that battle, what were you thinking when you designed your suit? If you knew your sense of hearing was so sensitive, why didn't you prepare a countermeasure for it? If I'm not mistaken, your mask has a respiratory system to protect you against harmful gases. Why didn't you get something similar for your ears? Naruto chuckled awkwardly and rubbed the back of his head. Haha, I kinda forgot about it. Eraserhead narrowed his eyes at him. Make sure you go to the support department after classes and see what they can do for you. Yes, sensei, Naruto said and nodded obediently. He acknowledged his mistake. Also, the teacher began to say rather hesitantly, I suggest you stop using those knives of yours. Before the fox boy had the chance to ask why, Aizawa continued. I could see from the videos that you are very skilled with your weapons. But accidents can happen. Imagine if those 6 knives that you threw did not meet their mark and instead wounded Bakugo fatally. As pro heroes, our job is not to kill the villains. We don't have the right to take anyone's lives. They will receive a fair trial and pay for their crimes according to the law. Do you understand? Naruto did not reply right away. I'm already at a disadvantage against guys like Bakugo, and especially against someone like All Might or that giant mount lady. Even my hysterical strength won't do much against powerhouses like them. Not using blades puts me in an even worse position, he thought, bummed out. Naruto was not a bloodthirsty person. Even in his past life as a shinobi, he could count on the fingers of one hand the number of people that he had killed. He avoided killing if he could. But that did not mean that he was pulling his punches when the situation called for him to go all out. Besides, growing up in this world had made him understand that the values of the society he lived in currently were different from those of the Hidden Leaf Village. Eraserhead said. If you want to keep on using weapons, blunt weapons are preferred. They can pack a serious punch while keeping the injuries at a minimum. But you should avoid lethal weapons that could easily kill someone. Okay. I understand, Naruto said eventually. A few days later. Hey, Naruto, we're going to karaoke after school. You wanna come with us? A girl with pink hair, pink skin, and 2 horns on her head asked while motioning with her hand at her, a group of teens waiting for her in the hallway. Sorry, Mina, I have to take care of something. The pink-haired girl pouted at his answer. Oh, come on. You're always busy after classes, let's go have some fun. Look, even someone like Bakugo is coming along. What's that supposed to mean, huh? The edgy blonde screamed. Do you want me to kick your ass? But the girl ignored his shouts. Bakugo's classmates had gotten used to his personality by now and tended to tune him out whenever his anger management issues flared up. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and grinned apologetically. Sorry, maybe next time. It's really important, I can't put it off. Saying that, he grabbed his backpack and waved his hand in goodbye at the rest of his classmates. See you later, guys, have a nice weekend. As he went down the stairs, Naruto had a distracted look on his face. She likes me. He was not experienced when it came to interacting with the opposite sex, but due to his enhanced sense of smell, Naruto could roughly identify other people's emotions. He could smell people's fear, anger, sadness, happiness, hatred or feelings of attraction. It was an underrated but very useful aspect of his quirk, one that he had not told anyone else about except for his parents. He let out a wry smile while thinking that, unlike how unpopular he had been at school in his previous life, in his current life, he had always been one of the more popular boys in his class throughout all of his school years. I guess that not annoying the heck out of everyone made all the difference. These cute fox ears must have helped too. He absent-mindedly ran a hand through his hair and scratched his fox ears. They seemed even fluffier than usual due to a pair of fluffy white mufflers that had been stuffed inside. He was still not used to wearing them because he had gotten them only 2 days ago. They hindered his sense of balance sometimes, especially when he stood up quickly from a chair, but they did help a great deal in protecting him from loud sounds. He knew that it was only a matter of time before he became accustomed to them. Eventually, he reached the gates of UA. A rather well-built but still timid-looking boy was waiting for him, his face haggard from exhaustion. It was none other than Midoriya Izuku. "Yo," Naruto said and bumped fists with the boy. "Hey," Izuku greeted him, not even having the energy to smile. "What happened to you, man? You look like you got run over by a truck," Naruto said with a chuckle, looking at all the bruises on Izuku's face and the bandages wrapped around his neck and hands. "Fuck off," the boy said with a growl, looking as if he was barely stopping himself from attacking him. Naruto was taken aback. It was the first time he had ever heard Izuku swear. But then, he grinned fiercely. The wooden bow staff made whooshing sounds as a green-haired boy used his entire strength to smash downwards. His opponent, also wielding a similar bow staff, easily parried a hit by holding his weapon horizontally above his head. In the next moment, a powerful kick in the gut sent the green-haired boy flying. "You telegraphed your attack and left yourself wide open," Naruto said, his voice serious. Lifting his staff above his head, Naruto slammed it at the boy that was coughing his stomach out, showing no mercy. Izuku barely managed to roll away, escaping by a breath. Seeing how the ground cracked from the hit, however, made the boy's heart start beating as if to jump out of his chest. Despite that he was out of breath and still coughing from the vicious kick in the stomach, Izuku forced himself to stand up on his feet and clenched his hands around his weapon. "I'm not done yet," Izuku shouted with as much conviction as he could and charged at Naruto with a scream. The blonde swatted his strike to the side with one end of his staff and immediately hit Izuku in the face with the staff's other end. He did not get up again this time around. Instead, his body started shaking and sobbing sounds came from him. "Are you serious?" "Crying?" Naruto said in disbelief. He came at the boy and lifted him to stand on his feet, his hands clenched on the collar of his t-shirt. "Is that what you're going to do when a villain tries to kill you? You'll cry like a little girl. Do you think they'll feel pity for you and let you go?" He threw Izuku away and grabbed his bow staff from the place where he had discarded it before turning away to leave. "Useless, gutless, and lazy. You'll never amount to anything if you keep going like that. Pro hero my ass. You'll always be a reject." "No, even below the rejects," Naruto said over his shoulder. It was completely out of character for the kind and cheerful fox boy to speak like that. Until then, he had always been supportive and helpful toward Izuku. The words he was saying right now sounded more like the words that Bakugo often spat at the green-haired boy. However, in his current state of mind, Izuku could not see the strangeness of the situation. Instead, those words so similar to how Bakugo often bullied him triggered his anger. "Shut up!" Izuku screamed. "Shut up! Shut up!" Naruto did not appear to be surprised in the least by his outburst. He scoffed at him. "I wasted nearly a year of my life training you. And for what? You failed the entrance exam. All you do is cry. Now you ask me to train you again. Once again you're crying." The more calm and derisive Naruto appeared to be, the more enraged Izuku was becoming. "You trained me? Beating the crap out of me every day, you call this training? Fuck you and your training." For over a week now, ever since Izuku decided to go through Naruto's training to learn how to tap into the latent strength of his body, his hysterical strength, the blonde pushed him to the limits mercilessly. After making him run out of stamina and energy completely by running, they would fight. But calling that a fight was a stretch. It was a one-sided beatdown. After nearly 1 week of bitter suffering, he could no longer bear the exhaustion. He could not endure the pain coming from his bruised and battered body. He could no longer endure the verbal and physical abuse anymore. He was at his limit. "Maybe if you actually learned what I taught you wouldn't get mauled like that every day. Is it my fault you can do anything?" Naruto said indifferently. "You know nothing. You know nothing about my struggles. You don't know how it feels to be quirkless. Shut up. Shut up, asshole." Izuku screamed and charged at Naruto madly. But Naruto easily parried his wild swing and countered with a right cross that made Izuku stumble back on wobbly feet. If Izuku had been in his right mind, he would have noticed that the fox boy's punches were far less powerful than usual, that he was going easy on him. But he wasn't thinking straight. Emboldened by the fact that Naruto's punch did much less damage than he had expected, Izuku charged back at him again with a tackle, shooting down for a double leg. But Naruto met his tackle head-on, and before Izuku could wrap his arms around the back of his legs and take him down, the blonde's right knee smashed into his face. It was a method often used by strikers to defend against wrestlers. Izuku fell face first on the ground, unable to muster even the slightest strength to get up anymore. "I tried to help you, you know." He heard Naruto's voice coming from above. It sounded a bit muffled, but he could still understand the words perfectly. Quirkless as you are, I didn't want to let you jump head first into danger and get yourself killed. But you are helpless. You can't do anything. Just a pathetic crybaby. You'll die on your first patrol mission against some cannon fodder villain, bringing a bad name and shame to all heroes. If that's the case, I might as well do it myself. I'll send you away quickly and painlessly. Izuku felt the end of a wooden staff rolling his body until he was on his back, with eyes in the sky. What? You don't think I will kill you? Naruto asked. You think I don't have the guts? Saying that, the blonde pressed the end of his bow staff into the notch of Izuku's neck, that dip in someone's neck between the Adam's apple and the sternum. Izuku's eyes widened in disbelief, and he grabbed the end of the staff with both of his hands. Despair flooded him when he felt the stick going deeper into his throat, suffocating him. You wouldn't be the first I killed. How do you think that sludge villain that had attacked me died? Do you think some random vigilante just happened to pass by and saved me? Naruto let out a mocking laugh and started pressing the staff harder into the green-haired boy's neck. He's gonna kill me. He's gonna kill me. Izuku screamed in his mind, tears falling from his bloodshot eyes uncontrollably. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Cracking noises suddenly came from the part of the stick where Izuku's hands were clenched around. As if I'd let you kill me. Izuku screamed, and half of Naruto's staff was suddenly shattered into splinters. He rolled away from the end of the blonde staff and jumped up to his feet in an impressive display of agility and flexibility. Then, still screaming, he lunged at Naruto and punched him with his entire strength. But the blonde did not evade his punch and let Izuku hit him. Possessing a strength abnormal for a body like his, Izuku's punch sent a 70 kilograms heavy boy flying through the air nearly 2 meters before he collapsed. However, upon connecting with that powerful punch, it was as if a veil had been lifted from his eyes and Izuku finally regained his clarity of mind. He looked at the collapsed Naruto on the ground and then at his still clenched fist. His entire body started shaking and he started crying anew. This is Dot. But these were no longer tears of despair or pain. They were tears of relief. I did it. He said through his sobs. His entire body was one big bruise and he had almost died only a few moments ago. At least he had truly believed that he was going to die. But in that moment, Izuku felt joy like no other time in his life. I did it. He said again and let out a cry that sounded like a mixture between a sob and a cheer. Naruto stood up from the place where he crashed and knelt in front of Izuku. He wrapped Izuku in his arms in a brotherly hug and said, his voice filled with remorse. I'm sorry for what I did to you, Izuku. I'm so sorry. I tried for almost 1 week to push you beyond your limits, but it wasn't working. Making you believe you are in a life and death situation was the only method left. I'm sorry, I didn't mean any of the things I told you. Naruto's words made the floodgates open and Izuku started bawling his eyes out, hugging the blonde back for all he was worth. I know, don't apologize. It's my fault too, I'm sorry. Izuku cried. Having regained his wits, he understood what Naruto had done to him. There was no way that someone as kind and helpful as Naruto would suddenly change his character and speak such words to him, much less try to kill him. But he needed to push Izuku to his limits, physically and mentally. He had brought him to the edge of despair and even made him think that he was going to die. As the shadow of death encroached on his soul, his exhausted body was suddenly energized. His fear of death and his desire to live made his survival instincts kick into overdrive. Having long since reached his limits, that burst of strength made him overcome them. Hysterical strength. A power beyond the limits of the human body. He had achieved it. All the beatings that he had taken until then had not been for naught. All his tears, sweat, blood, and effort had not been in vain. He had done it. As that feeling of relief washed over him, adrenaline quickly left his system and Izuku felt his eyes grow heavy. His body lost its strength completely and he closed his eyes, falling unconscious into Naruto's arms. Chapter 7 A New Target. I'm beat, he thought and let out a sigh as he slowly made his way out of the woods outside of Mustafu City. Driving Izuku to the very limit had been taxing on himself as well. Rather than being physically exhausted, he was mentally exhausted. Treating his friend so badly and putting him through such punishment had made his stress level increase greatly. On his back, the bruised and battered Izuku was sleeping soundly, snoring and drooling on his shoulder. As for their backpacks, Naruto had tied them to his fluffy foxtail. But at least he did it. He was proud of Izuku. He was also amazed at the boy's tenacity and stubbornness. For someone who had grown up in a peaceful environment to have that kind of willpower, it was amazing, to say the least. That's because the average people in this world were different. Living in a time of peace, in a country where villains were mostly suppressed by the strength of the heroes and the existence of All Might, the average people were weak-willed, physically weak and mentally weak as well. They expected someone else to save them. His thoughts going back to Konoha, Naruto inadvertently started comparing his previous life with his current life on Earth. Back in the elemental nations, children were indoctrinated from a very frail age to believe that there was no greater honor than to protect their village. The so-called will of fire. For the sake of the village, even sacrificing one's family was noble and just. In times of war, it was normal to even send children as young as 10 on the front lines, serving as little more than cannon fodder against the enemy forces. That's how Uchiha Itachi ended up massacring his entire family for the sake of Konoha. That's also how my father had committed suicide for the sake of sealing Kurama into my body. That's how he had made me into a human sacrifice. It was all for the sake of the village. A shinobi endures. A shinobi sacrifices everything for the village. His train of thought stopped as he finally exited the woods and the night lights of the city appeared in the distance. "You're sleeping without a care, aren't you?" Naruto asked Izuku despite knowing that he couldn't hear him. "Hey, it's okay. You deserve it. But man, you sure gained a lot of weight over the past year. You got heavier than I am, did you bulk up that much?" He knelt on the ground on the side of the road and put the sleeping Izuku down for a moment to catch his breath. "Shit, why am I so tired today?" Raising his hands above his head, he stretched his back and let out a loud yawn, his sharper than average teeth glinting in the moonlight. Wiping his yawn tears away, he absent-mindedly scratched at his lower back for a while. But after that, he put the sleeping Izuku on his back again and started walking again towards the city. As weeks passed, the students of 1A class at UA had become increasingly familiar with each other. In everyone's minds, several labels were created about their classmates and, as Mineta Minoru would put it, a sort of social hierarchy appeared. There were the popular kids, the average ones, the perverts, the bullies and so on. The label had been slapped on Naruto and his classmates' minds too. To put it simply, if students were given the freedom to choose their partner during All Might's combat training classes, most of them would be clamoring to get either Todoroki Shoto or Uzumaki Naruto on their team. Always cheerful and helpful, having a decent quirk, an incredible combat strength, and a mind that came up with all sorts of devious plans, it was not difficult to see why he had become so popular. However, all that was only during the class. Once classes ended, the fox boy never hung out with them. It was now the third week into their first high school year, and Naruto had yet to form any close friendships with anyone in his class. Every time someone asked him to join them after class, he would say that he was busy and make himself scarce in a matter of seconds. "I wonder what Uzumaki's secret is. Why is he avoiding us?" Kirishima said as he watched the fox boy grab his backpack and wave his hand in goodbye at everyone before leaving. "He's always turning down people asking him out and I've never seen him eat together with us in the cafeteria either." "I mean, I wouldn't eat at the cafeteria either if I were in his place," Kaminari said. "Have you seen the kind of lunch boxes he brings to school every day?" Ever since Naruto had turned a new leaf, his mother had started pampering and spoiling him much more than before. Naruto wasn't avoiding anyone on purpose. There was just no point in him going to the cafeteria when his mom cooked for him and after class, he was busy with his training. He didn't have time to fool around with children. "I bet he's seeing a girl." The tiny boy, Mineta Minoru said, his face green with envy. "Eichmann bastards like him always have the girls flock around them. He's probably seeing 3 girls at the same time and making them cook for him. He's surely." The boy's dark ramblings were suddenly stopped when Taniya Iida smacked him upside the head. "Mineta-san. That was a very rude way to talk about your classmate." Regardless of the class rep's scolding, Mineta's words had already inflicted the maximum damage if the looks on the faces of the other students were anything to go by. "Hey. Who wants to see what Naruto is up to after class?" Mina Shido asked. "I kinda want to know too," Kaminari said. "Count me in," Mineta said. Mineta, Mina, and Kaminari weren't the only ones curious about Naruto's secret. 3 others decided to tag along. Yayoi Rozu, Kirishima and Kyoka. Humming out in the courtyard of the school, they saw Naruto waiting for someone at the gates. 2 minutes later, a green-haired 15-year-old boy with a strong-looking body but an innocent face came out of the school building and bumped fists with the fox boy as a greeting. "Who's that guy, do any of you know him?" Kaminari asked. "Keep it down, you idiot, or he's gonna hear us, did you forget about his sense of hearing?" Kyoka jeered at him in a harsh whisper. "Figuring you didn't forget about it," the blonde countered snidely, only to let out a yowl of pain when one of her earphone jacks stabbed him in the neck. Naruto turned his head towards the noise, only to see Kaminari rolling on the ground in pain comically and another 5 or 6 of his classmates glaring at him murderously. "See you tomorrow, guys." Naruto said out loud and waved his hand goodbye before turning around and leaving with his friend. "What's with that?" Mina burst after Naruto left with Izuku through the gates. "Whenever we ask him to hang out with us after class, he always says he's busy. That's what he's busy with. Who's that guy anyway? Arg. This is so annoying. I know everyone in class 1B by name and appearance, but I haven't seen his friend until now. He's not from the hero course, Yaoirozu said. 30 minutes later, following Naruto and Izuku from a distance, the 6 UA students found themselves staring at a dingy-looking gym from across the street. Now what? We can't just barge in, we'll blow our cover, Kyoka said. Who cares? I say we just go home now. Mineta said and clicked his tongue. The tiny boy had been hoping that their little spying would uncover some dirty secret about Naruto and make his place in the social hierarchy of the class collapse. Seeing him doing something as mundane as going to the gym greatly disappointed him. But a boy next to him had a completely different opinion. Uzumaki was a gym rat awesome. Kirishima yelled and, before the other 5 could stop him, he broke into a run and barged into the gym. Kirishima, wait. Mina yelled in annoyance and ran after him too. The rest could only sigh helplessly and run after them inside. What kind of place is this? Yaoirozu said with a stutter. For a young lady that had lived in a select environment, the atmosphere in the gym left her momentarily intimidated. She wasn't the only one though, the 2 other girls, Mina and Jiro and Mineta Minoru, were scared too. The 4 teens unconsciously huddled together, no different than how herd animals reacted when surrounded by predators. Nearly 20 men of all ages and appearances were standing around an open space where they would take turns doing deadlifts. The whole gym reverberated with their screams of encouragement and their manly grunts of exertion as they gave it their all to surpass their limits. The group of teens arrived there just in time to see Naruto shoving his green-haired friend in the middle of the circle, in the open area. Wearing proper deadlifting equipment, special shoes, a weightlifting belt, and shin protectors, Midoriya Izuku rubbed his palms with some chalk powder, while the rest of the guys in the circle around him were yelling at the top of their lungs. Feel it, Midoriya. You can do it, boy. Fight. Uea. The bass-boosted music blasting in the background, the roars of the men filled with testosterone and the loud sounds of weight slamming on the floor made even Kaminari huddle up together with Mineta and the 3 girls. Out of the 6 students that followed Naruto after school, only Kirishima was having a good time. Scratch that, the red-haired boy looked positively electrified. He had joined the crowd of burly men around the ring and had started screaming together with them too. Finishing his preparations, Izuku stepped in front of the heavy barbell. Bending down, he stood still for a few moments to find a good position with his hands. Then, with a grunt of exertion, the muscles of his arms, back, and thighs bulged as he stood up. Hold it. Hold it. 2 more seconds. Done. Good job, boy. Izuku threw his barbell to the ground and let out a scream of victory. At that moment, his usually timid and nerdy personality was nowhere to be seen. Adrenaline coursing through his veins, Izuku yelled. One more time. When they saw him adding 2 more plates, 2.5 kilograms each, the men erupted into beast-like screams again. Many in the crowd could lift 5 or even 10 times heavier weights than what the quirkless boy could. However, over the past year, they noticed the nerdy boy's transformation, his consistency and his hard work. Although quirkless and much weaker than the majority of them, Izuku had earned their respect with his hard work. Moreover, despite their intimidating looks, gym rats were some of the nicest people one could meet. Seeing a boy as honest and as diligent as Izuku, they wanted to cheer him on. Good job, man, you broke your record, 155 kilograms. Naruto congratulated Izuku once he came out from the deadlifting ring. Haha, thanks. Izuku said and laughed with a foolish expression on his face. It was almost as if he was high. My turn now, Naruto said with a grin. They high-fived each other before he stepped into the open area. Wearing black shorts, a bright orange wife beater, a pair of orange sneakers on his feet, a special fitness mask that covered his nose and mouth, and having 2 fluffy fox ears on his head and a bushy golden fox tail at his back, Naruto's appearance was rather goofy. Oi, is he serious? Kirishima mumbled to himself when he saw that the fox boy continued to put plates on the barbell until it became 5 times heavier than his body weight. Standing at a height of 165 centimeters, Naruto weighed only 70 kilograms, bushy fox tail included. Compared to Izuku, who had bulked up and looked rather muscular after 1 year of intense training, Naruto looked the same as usual. Fit in tone but not muscular, rather similar to how he used to look at that age in his previous life. Due to his fox quirk, his body was predisposed towards agility rather than brute strength. Still, the blonde had never given up on increasing his physical strength. After years of training his body, although his quirk gave him an overwhelming agility perk, his strength had increased steadily thanks to his hard work as well. Izuku watched in slight envy how the blonde deadlifted 350 kg without any evident signs of strain on his face. It was impossible for quirkless people to lift such weights at the age of 15. Putting the barbell down, Naruto momentarily let go of it and scratched at his lower back. Did you get flies in your tail, Blondie? Someone asked, making everyone bark with laughter at his expense. Shut up. "You're just jelly, you don't get any girls with that bald head of yours," Naruto retorted, eliciting another round of laughter. Bantering like that was the norm among them. As a hardcore gym, it had a rather small number of members, so pretty much everyone knew everyone. Sharing a common interest and frequenting the same place for a long time would naturally lead to people becoming friends after a while. Putting 2 more plates of 20 kg each, this time Naruto cried out in exertion when he pulled the barbell up. However, he could not hold the deadlift for more than 2 seconds and dropped it on the floor with a loud bang. "What happened, did you not eat today, boy?" One of the older men laughed teasingly. TSK, you've been slacking off as of late, haven't you?" A mountain of a man with forearms as thick as Naruto's waist said. "Only 400 kilograms and you're grunting like you're about to die. I can do biceps curls with that weight." The first time that Izuku had witnessed a scene like that a year ago, he had thought in his mind no way Naruto would fall for a cheap provocation like that. But the reality couldn't be any more different than his thoughts. The blonde's artery started pulsing in his neck and he growled at the four-armed man that laughed at him. "Ha. I'm 70 freaking kilos and my tail is half of my weight, but I can lift 5 times my weight. 6 times my weight when I'm in shape. How much can you lift, eh? 2 or 3 tons. But you're heavier than a hippo, you four-armed fattest. You can barely lift your own body weight." Izuku burst into laughter alongside everyone else. It was always a delight to watch Naruto getting riled up and arguing with his mates at the gym. The fox boy seemed to have a gift for making people open up and his cheerful and fun personality always made for a good time. It also had to be said that Naruto was even more rambunctious than usual whenever he went to the gym. It was as if his brain turned off whenever he stepped into a room filled with weights. But then again, it wasn't that unusual. Men and boys, in general, were like that. Whenever they gathered in large groups, their collective IQ dropped by half. Leaving the deadlift ring for someone else to have their turn, Naruto came back to Izuku and plopped himself on the floor without a care. "Ah, today is not my day," he said with a groan and scratched his lower back furiously. "I've also had this itch on my spine for like a week every time I strain myself." "Maybe you should get it checked out," Izuku said. "You can't mess around with back injuries." "But it doesn't hurt, there's no pain, just an itchy sensation," Naruto said and frowned at the mental struggle against giving in to the urge to rub his lower back again. "But I guess it wouldn't hurt to see Recovery Girl tomorrow at school. Anyway, you've been on a roll lately." Izuku clenched his fist, the muscles of his forearm bulging slightly. "Yeah. Even since you made me unlock my hysterical strength, I feel I'm getting stronger at a faster rate than before. I haven't managed to get into that state again, but I've gotten stronger overall. Still, it's nothing compared to you. When will I get strong enough to lift 350 to 400 kilos?" he said and trailed off a bit. "You knew what you were getting into when you decided to become a pro hero without having a quirk," Naruto said. "If you have time to think about useless stuff and start doubting yourself, you might as well pick up some weights and get back at it. No pain no gain," he said and suddenly shouted at the end, startling Izuku. "You're such a dork," Izuku said with a laugh. Working out, getting stronger, and being always encouraged by Naruto had done wonders for his self-confidence. He still had a rather shy personality when interacting with strangers, but with Naruto, he had become comfortable enough to even exchange insults and banter. Still, in spite of his words, Izuku stood up, intent on actually listening to what Naruto told him. "He's right. I don't have the leisure to be lazing around and moaning about being weak and quirkless. I'll just have to work harder." He picked up some dumbbells and started his workout routine, while Naruto went to the squat rack. Today was a leg day for the blind. It was a few minutes later that the guys crowded around the deadlifting ring broke into a commotion. "Holy shit. She's gotta have a strength-based quirk or something. Damn, that's one strong woman." Their remarks piqued Naruto's interest. Regular women disliked gyms and even fewer were interested in weightlifting. He had not seen a woman or a girl come to that gym in months. Furthermore, this wasn't exactly the kind of gym that even athletic girls would feel comfortable in. It was filled with burly and muscular men, it stank terribly of sweat, hence why he was always wearing a special gym mask, and the gym apparatus was rather old and rough looking, but Naruto liked it better like that. A messy and stinky gym rather than some luxurious place where the average members would be teens and young people that come to flirt and take selfies to post on social media instead of working out. Standing up from the floor, he went to the deadlifting ring to see what was going on too. By the time he finally managed to shove his way until he got a first-row view, the woman in question was preparing to lift the barbell for a second time. Very little could be seen of her upper body due to the large and loose blue hoodie that covered her torso and her head and most of her face as well. But her yoga pants did little to hide her long but strong and muscular legs. "Goddamn," was the only thing he could say when he saw the dark-skinned woman lift the huge-looking barbell from the ground. It was heavier than a ton and it looked ridiculous compared to her size because she was even shorter than Naruto by a few centimeters. But when the woman finished her deadlift and went back to her workout, Naruto did not continue to ogle at her. He went back to his leg exercises as well, intent on killing his quads with the leg press machine. It was then that a red-haired boy came to him, his face flushed with excitement. "Kirishima. What are you doing here?" Naruto paused his exercise and asked in surprise, noticing him for the first time. "Dude. I didn't know you went to the gym. Why didn't you tell us? We could have worked out together every day. Also, this place is fucking awesome, man. I can't believe there are still gyms like this in the city." Moments later, the 5 other students came after Kirishima too. "Let me guess, y'all have been following me after classes ended. Bruh." His deadpan was so expressive that his classmates could not stop their embarrassment from showing on their faces. "You guys have that much free time on your hands. Don't you train your quirks in your free time? Your bodies? Or, I don't know, at least study or do your homework," he said. "You're not one to talk about us not doing our homework," Kyoka mumbled, her arms crossed in front of her chest. In all fairness, Naruto's grades were on the lower end in the class ranking when it came to regular classes like maths. He simply couldn't bring himself to care about stuff like that. He only put in enough effort to get passing grades and not make his parents worry about his schoolwork. Nothing beyond that. All his free time was dedicated to training. Half an hour later, Naruto, Izuku, and the 6 stalkers left the gym. After promising Kirishima that he would take him with them whenever they went to the gym from then on, everyone went their separate ways home, leaving Naruto and Izuku alone. But after a few minutes, the 2 boys had to separate as well. "I think we'll have to meet less often from now on," Naruto said. "Eh? Why?" Izuku asked, immediately becoming agitated. "There isn't much I can teach you anymore, to be honest. Now that you unlocked your hysterical strength, what you should focus on is getting stronger. Remember, hysterical strength isn't some miraculous power that comes out of nowhere. It's just the maximum strength of your body, so the stronger you get, the higher your hysterical strength will be too when you break your limits." "But what about martial arts? Our bow staff training and our hand-to-hand combat? You can continue to do that at the dojo. Many people at the dojo are stronger than you, so it's not like you won't have sparring partners." Seeing Izuku's downcast expression, Naruto said. "Look man, don't think I'm giving up on you. But I believe that you need less martial arts training right now and more strength training. If I were you, I'd hit the gym for a while instead of going to the dojo. Besides, you don't need me to babysit you anymore. We can still spar once a week if you want, but from now on you will need to depend on yourself more." He made a small pause before he added. "I have to step up my own training too. There are some guys in class with really amazing quirks. Like Bakugo, like Endeavor's son, or like that girl you couldn't keep your eyes off her chest when we were at the gym. I have to get stronger much faster or I'll be left behind." Izuku's face instantly became beet red. What are you talking about?" Naruto snickered like a hyena. "Oh you know, that girl with big breasts. A real set of. Packing some serious. Shut up," he yelled amidst Naruto's laughter. He was mortified with embarrassment. "I'm going home." Wait, sheesh. I was joking." "It wasn't funny," Izuku mumbled, his face still red. "I wasn't even looking at her, she wasn't the prettiest one." Realizing that he had thought out loud, he suddenly became as silent as a grave. "Ho ho," Naruto chuckled. "I'm surprised you think she wasn't the prettiest. Yaoi Rozu is the most popular girl among all freshmen, you know." Let me guess, you like the pink-haired girl more?" It doesn't look like it. Oh wow, now you really took me by surprise. You think Kyoka was the prettiest? The girl with the long ears?" Izuku shrugged his shoulders, trying to appear nonchalant, but his burning face and red ears did not help his case. "Relax, man, I'm not making fun of you. Kyoka is pretty cute, I agree. Do you want me to introduce you to her?" Izuku suddenly waved his hands in front of his face in alarm. No, he yelled, blushing anew. "Eh? Why not? If you like a girl, why not let her know how you feel?" Naruto had never been shy about telling someone what he felt about them. Quite the opposite, especially in his past life, he had been outspoken about his feelings to the point where he had been obnoxious. "I just met her today and I just thought she was pretty, that's all," he mumbled. "That doesn't mean I want to start anything. Besides, I don't have time for girls and relationships. I have to train to catch up with everyone because I am quirkless. I need to study as well because if I want to transfer to the hero course, I need not only strength but good grades as well. I have to get a teacher's recommendation too, and I need to make a good impression at the upcoming fight competition. Besides that." I get it. Naruto yelled to stop him from his crazed muttering. Even after all this time, Izuku had not changed that habit of his. Stopping fooling around, Naruto said seriously. Don't slack off, man. You need to remember that you're not the only one that works hard. People with decent quirks are working hard too, or even harder. You have to give 100% of yourself. No, 120% of yourself if you want to bridge the gap between you and the likes of Bakugo. He has always been your goal, hasn't he? Izuku nodded with conviction. I used to admire him, yes. But for a while now, my target has changed. It's not Kakin that I want to surpass anymore. My target is you, Naruto. Naruto did not laugh, nor did he scoff at the boy's words. Instead, he grinned at him confidently and raised his fist in front of him. I trust you. But don't think I'll be waiting for you to catch up. I will keep on moving ahead. Whether you catch up to me and surpass me or not, it all depends on your effort. Work hard, Izuku. The boys bumped their fists together and grinned at each other for a moment. Then, they went their separate ways. Chapter 8 Florida Smash. All 18 students of 1A class from UA's Hero course were riding a bus on their way to an off-campus training facility. For the first time since starting high school, the aspiring heroes would be taught how to rescue people from natural or man-made disasters. Filled with energy and oozing with pride about their quirks, they were in very high spirits. No one can beat me in the water. Sayu said and let out a frog croak at the end. My zero gravity is perfect for rescuing people trapped inside collapsed buildings. Ichako also said confidently and clenched her fists in expectation. One by one, they started bragging about the advantages that their quirks would give them in a rescue operation. But not all of them had advantageous quirks for rescue operations. Man, it must be nice having such useful quirks for rescue. This is the real duty of a hero, to rescue people. Kirishima said wistfully. But your quirk isn't that bad either, Mina tried to cheer him up. My hardening is better for fighting against others rather than rescuing. And even then, it's not that flashy. You have to think about your popularity as a hero too, you know. If we're talking about both strong and flashy, it's gotta be Todoroki and Bakugo. Uzumaki's quirk is simple, but he looks like he's going to be super popular as a pro hero too, Mina Ashido said and looked at a blonde boy that was sleeping in the back of the bus. Bakugo's always mad, so he doesn't look like he'll be popular, though, Sayu said, and the blonde in question took less than a second to start screaming himself hoarse and threatening to kill everyone. The commotion caused by his bickering classmates also woke Naruto up. Maybe because of his ever-growing feeling of tiredness over the past week, or maybe because he was bored at the prospect of training for rescue operations, the fox boy had fallen asleep on the bus. Rubbing his eyes and letting out a yawn, he asked the classmate next to him. Are we there yet? The one in question, a plain-looking boy with short blonde hair and a strong-looking tail at his back answered. You woke up just in time. Sensei said we should arrive shortly. Naruto let out a yawn and raised his hands above his head to stretch. But, as his entire body tensed, he suddenly became aware of the fact that his tail was trapped in place, unable to move. Looking to his right, an invisible girl was hugging his fluffy foxtail with both arms and rubbing her face against it while letting out quiet mofu coos. What the heck are you doing? Naruto yelped and suddenly jumped up all the way to the front of the bus, defying the laws of gravity with his inhuman movement. Hagakure's face could not be seen, but everyone could tell how distraught she was from the tragic cry she let out. Nuo. My mofu. The hair on his forearms standing on ends and his foxtail looking like a chainsaw spoke volumes of what he was feeling at that moment. But that only endeared him even more with the girls. Mina Ashido and Ichako Uraraka, in particular, had hearts in their eyes. His panicked expression and his porcupine-like foxtail made him look adorable beyond belief. The combination of his father's handsome genes, his fox ears, his foxtail, and his reasonably fit body had created the heartthrob of most teenage girls. Luckily, their homeroom teacher, Azawa, came to his rescue before he could be assaulted by the cuteness overload affected girls. They had arrived at their destination. A shipwreck, a landslide, a fire, and so on. It is a training ground that I made with different types of accidents and disasters that heroes are likely to encounter in their line of work. It's called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ for short. As the astronaut-costumed hero excitedly presented the immense indoor training facility, Naruto involuntarily yawned. It was not that he disrespected the Hero 13 or those that aspired to become like her. It was only that it was not related to what he was going to specialize in once he graduated and became a pro hero. The current position of heroes in today's society was as such. Whether they were just one person or 100 of them, every single hero had to belong to a hero agency, no exceptions. It could even be a one-man agency. All hero agencies were subordinated to the Hero Public Safety Commission, HPSC, which worked in a close relationship with the police force in order to coordinate their combined strength and fight against crime. Basically, pro heroes was just another name for mercenaries. Heroes were paid by the HPSC based on the jobs that they took and their degree of involvement in accomplishing the task. Therefore, it was entirely up to pro heroes what kind of jobs contracts they took from the HPSC, depending on what they specialized in. For example, someone like Bakugo would rarely take rescue jobs. Those like him would favor arrests, raids, escort missions, etc. Naturally, pro heroes could also earn money by doing other activities on the side. And that is where heroes' popularity came into play. The more popular a hero was, the more sought after they would be by companies to shoot commercials and promote various goods for them. But that was not the only thing. Pro heroes could also sell merchandise with their names on them, figurines molded after themselves, posters and so on. Some particularly good-looking and popular heroes were even given offers to become actors or fashion models. A successful pro hero was the perfect combination between a showbiz celebrity and a special forces agent. That said, with his quirk, Naruto was not exactly suited for saving people from burning houses, shipwrecks, flooded cities and so on. His quirk was more predisposed to combat, tracking down villains and capturing them. Today's practical training was not very useful or interesting for him. 13. Where is All Might? He was supposed to meet us here, Eraser had asked, his visage as grumpy as always. Something urgent had intervened. He said he would not be able to attend the class any longer. Aizawa felt the corner of his right eye start twitching. He would have liked to say that he was surprised, but he couldn't. He had totally expected the All Might to ditch his teaching responsibilities on himself at one point or another. Oh well. Nothing we can do about it. Let's get things started, he said, trying to keep the annoyance in his voice to a minimum. Well, 13 started to advise the students about the dangers of using their quirks irresponsibly and their duty as heroes to protect the citizens. Suddenly, the power in the entire dome-shaped building was cut. Then, a vortex of dark purple light appeared. 1 hour ago. Almost 1 month had passed since All Might had taken a teaching position at UA High, and things were going relatively well for the number 1 hero. The key point being on relatively. He was still in the process of getting used to teaching students, but he did not dislike imparting his experience and knowledge to the next generation. Furthermore, it gave him a pretext, a way to hide the reason why he was unable to do as much hero work as before. In the present, due to his continuously deteriorating body and health, All Might could only do hero work for 3 hours a day. The main thing not going well in his life at the moment was the problem of finding a successor. I can't believe young Tagada turned down One for All. He was starting to become antsy because his power was only growing weaker with every passing day, and he had yet to find anyone in the hero course that fit his criteria even after several weeks. Many of them have what it takes to become a successful pro hero. Strong quirks and marketable personalities. He thought absent-mindedly while his body moved on autopilot to stop a hit-and-run criminal from getting away with his stolen goods. But who among them has the selfless heart of a hero? The will to fight for the innocent and protect them even at the cost of their lives. But All Might also understood that he would probably need a long time to get to know personally all the students in the hero course at UA. There were nearly 100 of them. He had only been a teacher for 3 weeks. I've got to be more patient, All Might told himself. Nonetheless, even as he thought that, he could feel anxiety welling up inside him. It's my fault, really. I have waited for too long to search for a successor. I shouldn't have let it get to this point. But then, his mind went back to the third-year student, Mirio Tagada. Despite his broken relationship with Sir Night-Eye, his former sidekick, he had never held any ill will towards him, and he had also known about his efforts of grooming Mirio into becoming his successor. What neither All Might nor Sir Night-Eye had predicted, however, was the degree of Mirio's selflessness and his desire to save people. I am honored for you to offer me your quirk, All Might. I have always admired and respected you and your efforts. You are my role model. Mirio said and smiled widely, a smile so similar to that of All Might himself. But I'm afraid I can't accept your gift. Why? All Might asked, his disbelief making him stutter. Just what teenage boy in their right mind would turn down what was considered one of the if not the most powerful quirk in the world? If All Might was surprised by his earlier response, it was nothing compared to his feelings after hearing what Mirio said next. Many thought of my quirk as useless at first. Even my father could not do anything with it. But I persevered. And I've become strong. Your quirk is already strong. Giving it to me will make me become even stronger than now, that is certain. Then why do you not want it? All Might asked. Mirio smiled in return as he said. Instead of having one very powerful hero, would it not be better to have 2 of them? Instead of making me stronger, would it not be better for there to be one more person, just as strong as I am? With 2 heroes as powerful as you are, would it not be easier to save everyone? His conversation with Tagada Mirio had been short but very impactful on All Might. The boy's resolve to help people and even his unshakable confidence that he would one day become just as strong as the number 1 hero were inspiring. It looked like Mirio's hero named Lemillion speaking of his wish to save 1 million people was not just empty talk. His desire to save people was so high that he even went as far as to turn down One for All in hopes that that quirk will be used by another person so more people would be saved. I can't deny his words. Young Mirio is already formidable and I have no doubt that, in time, he could become the #1 hero even without One for All. If I could find another vessel, it would be much better, indeed. In his rush to save as many people as possible and stop as many villains as he could, All Might happened to see the large clock tower of a church. It's almost time, I should head to work now, he thought. With one powerful jump, he launched himself across an entire district as if shot from the barrel of a cannon. But as he was flying over the city, a dangerous encounter caught his eye. Listen up, heroes. Don't come after me any longer. If you do, I'm going to kill this family here. A pink-skinned hulking man, over 6 meters tall said. He was so huge and muscular that he could hold 3 people hostage with one arm, using only the other one to fight against the heroes. The heroes in question, Kamui Woods and Mount Lady, were standing powerlessly in front of the villain, not knowing what to do. Kamui was all battered and barely standing on his feet, the villain's physical strength being too high for him to contend with. As for Mount Lady, she could not use gigantification out of fear that she would squash the innocent hostages to death too. It was this scene that Izuku had stumbled upon on his way to school. He was not the only bystander that had crowded in that place, many other people were gawking at the confrontation between the heroes and the villain, and many more were coming. They were all worrying their eyebrows and gnawing at their lips, stressed out for the family's safety. But none of them was thinking about trying to help. For a moment, Izuku was rooted in shock at the sight of the huge villain and the 3 hostages in its arms, 2 parents and a young girl. But then, his body moving on autopilot, he started running towards the villain head first, without thinking. He was just about to step out of the crowd and lunged at the villain into the open street when his best friend's words suddenly came to the front of his mind. You've gotten buff, the gym has been doing good to you. You're much stronger now. But don't let it get to your head. No matter how strong you are and how much you train, you will never be stronger than someone born with a power-type quirk. Don't forget your limits. If you want to save people, you have to stay alive first. You can't save anyone if you get yourself killed. Don't die, Izuku. As he recalled those words, it was as if someone had poured a bucket of ice-cold water on his head. He stopped in his tracks as if he had been petrified. What can I do against this guy? What can I do when someone as strong as Mount Lady and Kamui Woods can't deal with him? When he asked himself that question, it became clear to him why everyone was just watching from the sidelines powerlessly instead of trying to help the heroes in some way. Think, Izuku, think. Think, what can you do at this moment? The boy spoke to himself, his palms starting to become sweaty from the stress and urgency of the situation. While he was racking his brains for a solution, yet another memory from his long training sessions with Naruto sprung at the front of his mind. You'll probably meet many villains that are much stronger than you. But you can still turn the situation around sometimes if you play dirty. Don't hold back from anything, no matter how dirty or dishonest it looks. Throw pepper bombs at them, poke their eyes, kick them in the nuts. Back then, Izuku had laughed it off, not taking his words seriously. He had thought that the fox boy was joking around. But at this moment, an idea suddenly popped into his mind. Suddenly, the situation didn't seem as hopeless as before. He stepped back from the first row of the bystanders and went into the back of the crowd. Then, he circled around the group of people until he got to the back of the huge villain. Nobody was paying attention to him because they were all preoccupied with the fate of the 3 hostages in the villain's grasp. Nobody batted an eye when Izuku put down his school backpack and untied the telescopic metal rod that had been strapped to the side of the bag. After he fully extended his metallic bow staff and made his way through the crowd spectating the incident, his arms, his legs, his entire body started to shake. Was it fear? Was it nervousness? Was it exciting? Izuku himself could not define his feelings at that moment. I can do it. He told himself and his hands clenched harder on his staff. For the sake of making sure Izuku did not get himself killed, Naruto had beaten into him the mentality of always being aware of the difference between his strength and that of the enemy. Izuku knew that he was weaker, that even 10 of him would not be enough to defeat that mountain of a man in a fair fight. But his purpose was not to win a fight. His purpose was to save the lives of those 3 hostages. I don't need to defeat the villain. I don't need to play fair. If I can distract the villain for even one moment, it will be enough. The heroes will definitely take advantage of that opening. I will do it. I will save them. I can be a hero too. As he took the first step out of the crowd of bystanders, a rush of adrenaline flooded his system. Thoughts of his safety disappeared from his mind. Thoughts of the difference between his and the villain's strength were snuffed out too, as one simple desire burned brightly in his heart. To save the hostages' lives. With a burst of speed abnormal for a regular human, Izuku launched himself forth. Holding his staff from one end like a very big baseball bat, the green-haired boy swung his weapon with every bit of strength he possessed. Florida smash! Izuku roared as he smashed his staff right into the huge villain's nuts. In the next moment, all males present at the scene showed a terrible wince as the sound of eggs getting squashed had somehow been heard over all the background noises of the city. For a second there, Izuku thought that the villain had muscles even in his balls because he had not reacted in the least to the hit. But the heroes and the bystanders in front of the villain could see what happened. The villain's eyes rolled in the back of his head and, a second later, that mountain of a man fell forward, unconscious. Kamui Woods quickly used his quirk to wrestle the hostages free from the unconscious giant's arms, lest they were crushed by the enormous weight of his body. The cloud of dust rose in the air as the villain collapsed face first into the street, stiff, unconscious and foaming at the mouth. Being hit in the balls by someone using their hysterical strength. The villain had never stood a chance. Chapter 9 Hysteria. Gather together and don't move. Azawa was suddenly shouted when a large portal was opened in the middle of the training facility and numerous quirk users started pouring out. 13. Protect the students. Is this like the entrance exam where the lesson has already started? Kirishima asked. The students were thinking that it was all part of the scenario that the teachers had prepared for the class. But Azawa's shouts in the next moment made them understand what was the reality. Don't move. Those are villains. 13. I'm leaving them in your hands. Yes. As the astronaut costumed hero gave her verbal acknowledgement, Azawa put on his yellow goggles and started running down the flight of stairs. However, a human-shaped missile zoomed past him with such speed that Azawa could not even see its shape properly. But it all became clear in the next moment when two of the villains were kicked in the face seemingly at the same time. It was a butterfly kick, a wushu technique. As people gained superhuman physical abilities, martial arts techniques that had previously been used just in movies and in exhibitions due to their lack of practicality in real fights have become much more viable nowadays. With his superhuman dexterity and physical strength, Naruto could pull it off effectively with no effort. The two villains had been knocked out cold. Uzumaki. Azawa yelled. I told you to run away. What the hell are you doing here? But Naruto did not stop to listen to his lecture. There's no way you can beat them all alone, I'm here to help you. You can nag at me tomorrow, during the class, sensei, Naruto said leisurely as he sidestepped a hail of bullets coming from the turrets for hair of a woman. We have more important things to do now. Then, a small indentation was left in the ground as the fox boy abruptly jumped. His burst of speed was so great that, to his opponents, it appeared as if he had teleported. A brutal lariat smashed into a four-armed man's neck, almost taking his head off. He was not dead, but he was bound to be in a hospital for a long time. When another hail of bullets came from the group of attackers, Azawa got the fright of his life because Naruto was in midair and it looked like there was no way for him to dodge that. But the blonde's large fox tail twitched and his body unexpectedly changed its position in the air, successfully avoiding any damage. Uzumaki. Stay close. I'll support you from the back by erasing their quirks. Since he could not stop the boy from putting himself in danger, he would make the most out of it. Hi. Naruto replied in joy as he punched someone in the gut with so much strength that the guy collapsed on his knees, unable to breathe and foaming at the mouth. But don't think you're off the hook. Azawa said in annoyance as he erased a villain fire quirk and then used his scarf to pull one of the flying types down and kick him unconscious. When everything is over, you're going to be in a world of hurt, you hear that? Hi, Naruto sing-sang as he swept someone's legs from underneath with his foxtail and, before they could even fall to the floor, he also kicked them in the face, knocking them out. To say that Eraserhead was surprised by his efficient fighting style would be an understatement. While Uzumaki had always shown incredible battle awareness and combat strength at school, training and real battle were completely different. In a real battle, most people could not bring out even 80% of their strength. The way that the other students all tensed up and froze when he told them that villains were attacking had not escaped his notice. But the boy in front of him. It's almost as if he was born on the battlefield. Nevertheless, he did not think too hard about it at that moment. Instead, he focused on supporting him properly and keeping him as safe as possible. He erased the quirks of everyone who tried to attack Naruto from his blind spots and incapacitated those that got too close to him. The teacher and the student fell into a seamless pace, Naruto's excellent hand-to-hand combat prowess and Azawa's support from the back synergizing perfectly. Nearly 24 villains were knocked unconscious or worse in less than 4 minutes. By the end of it, even Naruto was sweating from exertion, but he was grinning widely, filled with excitement. He had expected 3 or 4 very long hours of boring rescue training, but instead, he got to let loose and fight with his entire strength for the first time in his life on Earth. It was liberating. Give me a break, is that really only a student? They mowed down everyone in a matter of minutes. The white-haired man with his face and body covered by human hands said in irritation and scratched his neck with his nails. A fine hero seedling, indeed. Indeed. Makes me want to nip it in the bud. As he said that, Shigaraki lunged at the fox boy with his arms outstretched in front of him and a malicious smile hidden behind the severed hand covering his face. "Whoa, Dafik is with that guy, creepy," Naruto said with a shiver as he took a look at the severed human hands all over Shigaraki's body. Moreover, he could sense a very dangerous smell coming from him. Before Shigaraki's hands could touch him, a front kick slipped through his arms and nailed him right in the face. Naruto's leg was longer than Shigaraki's arms. The silver-haired young man was sent flying through the air, the severed hand covering his face being flung off together with a mouthful of spit and blood. "I noticed in the earlier fights too, oi, are you trying to kill someone? Hold back some of that stupidly high strength or you'll really kill someone at this rate." Aizawa yelled at him from the side when he saw the way Naruto had nearly killed his opponent with one kick. But Naruto did not reply to him. The silver-haired man stood up from the ground as if he had not just been kicked in the face with the strength of a 2-ton heavy hit. Naruto had kicked him in the face with his full power on purpose, yet he was still not down for the count. But the severed hand flung off his face. Shigaraki started to panic and shriek as he covered his face with his own 2 hands. "Nomu. Kill them all," he screamed. "Uzumaki. Dodge." Aizawa yelled and used his quirk to erase the purple monstrosity's ability. However, it was not enough. Even with Naruto's superhuman reflexes and physical attributes, the muscular creature appeared as little more than a blur. A shockwave exploded forth as Nomu's massive punch slammed into the fox boy's chest. An entire man-made hillside was smashed into smithereens when the boy's body crashed into it, burying him underneath. "Uzumaki." Aizawa yelled in panic and broke into a run towards the place of the crash. But only a second after turning around, a massive hand grabbed him from the back of his neck and face slammed him into the ground. "How?" was the only thing he could think of at that moment. He had erased that creature's quirk, he was sure of it. Moreover, its quirks would remain unusable for as long as he did not blink. Eraserhead did not need to keep looking at him for that. How's it so strong? How's it so fast? After taking the severed hand from the place where it had been flung off and covering his face with it once again, Shigaraki regained his composure. He was even relaxed enough to let out a bout of hyena-like laughter. "You're probably wondering how is he so strong when you erased his quirk, aren't you?" Shigaraki spoke gloatingly. "I will tell you, Eraserhead. He's the anti-symbol of peace, the bioengineered Nomu. He was created to be as strong and as fast as All Might. In front of overwhelming power as his, you might as well be quirkless." As if to further confirm his words, Nomu grabbed Aizawa's left arm and snapped it in half like a twig. The creature was about to grab his right arm as well when, unexpectedly, a powerful hit smashed into its brain and flung its over 200 kilograms heavy body back as if it had been hit by a truck. "I almost died, you fucking bastard." Naruto rasped as blood flowed from a cut to his temple and from the corner of his mouth. The top of his hero costume was torn to shreds, his Anbu fox-like mask had been smashed to bits as well, and a large blackened bruise could be seen on his chest. If it had not been for his innate fox-like flexibility and agility, that punch from Nomu would have killed him on the spot. But there was one more thing that was different about the boy, something that even the half-unconscious Aizawa took notice of. Next to his bushy golden fox tail. There was one more. Another tail. Pushed to the brink of death, with one leg in the grave, his body had broken past its limits and his fox quirk awakened. He appeared to have transformed into a ghost as he blurred out from sight, leaving afterimages behind him. A strong kick into the chin sent the huge creature flying, and a shockwave burst from the impact, lifting clouds of dust into the air. "I'm not done yet." Naruto screamed and, just like Rock Lee from his previous life, with movements that defied the laws of gravity, he jumped after the still floating in mid-air Nomu and smashed his feet into its gut repeatedly, 4 times in a row. Faster than the spectators' eyes could follow, 6 shurikens with strings attached to them were thrown at the creature, tying it up completely. Then, swinging his 2 tails to give himself momentum while in mid-air, he grabbed onto the tied-up creature and plunged it head-first towards the ground. A loud crash reverberated across the entire training facility and a deep crater appeared in the ground with a muscular purple-skinned creature lying at the bottom of it. In his past life, Naruto had not been able to pull off such a move. However, with the specs of his 2-tailed fox quirk, his body had just reached the requirements for it, his strength and agility not any weaker than that of Rock Lee after opening the first out of the 8 inner gates. However, as if to reenact the fight between Rock Lee and Gaara's absolute defense from the memories of his previous life, Nomu stood up from the ground. It took Nomu a much longer time to regenerate this time around. But by the time its healing stopped, the creature appeared to be virtually unharmed. "Oi, oi." Naruto muttered in disbelief while trying to get his breathing under control. Not even a scratch. Seriously? It's no use. It's no use. Shigaraki laughed maniacally. His shock absorption is far beyond anything any of you could deal with. Nomu is the ultimate counter to physical damage. He was made to be as strong as All Might. You're better off gouging his flesh out if he lets you do that at all. Hahaha. As Shigaraki said that, Nomu let out a bestial scream and launched itself at Naruto. Stupid jackass. Thanks for telling me how to kill it. Naruto thought and evaded one of Nomu's punches as if he was the Matrix. Before the awakening of his fox quirk, his bursts of speed for short distances had already been greater than those of Taniya Ida. But after gaining his second tail, his agility was on a completely different level. Even so, as a being that was created to counter the number one hero, Nomu was not just as strong and durable as All Might, but its speed was incredible as well. It was only Naruto's martial experience and his animal-like instincts for sensing danger that allowed him to barely weave through the wind-stirring punches of the creature. This isn't good. If it hits me one time, I'm done. I can't keep on like this. He threw 2 smoke grenades on the ground and a super dense curtain of dark gray smoke burst out, cloaking the entire area into darkness. Sounds of sharp objects splitting the air were heard in the next moment, followed by sounds of metal colliding against hard surfaces. But after a while of dumbly looking around for its enemies, Nomu roared and suddenly clapped its hands. The shock wave generated by that handclap blew away all the smoke as if it had never existed in the first place. Regardless, Naruto had already accomplished his objective. The entire area was now filled with metallic wires tied from the loops of kunai that had been stabbed into the ground, surrounding hills, walls of ruined buildings, and even into the extremely tall ceiling of the dome-shaped training facility. It looked as if Nomu had been surrounded by a spiderweb or metallic wires. With agility and dexterity far beyond anything a regular human would be capable of, Naruto stood with his feet on one of the extremely thin wires above Nomu. The wire tensed when he suddenly crouched and launched himself at the creature below like an arrow shot from a bow. A scream came out from Nomu as Naruto flashed past him and opened a large gash into its neck, its blood bursting out like out of a showerhead. Although his homeroom teacher had suggested he give up on his kunai, Naruto had never had any intentions of handicapping himself against his enemies. He would hold back when the situation allowed it because he would rather avoid unnecessary killing. But when shit hit the fan, he would not hold back from using his full strength and all the means available to him in order to win. That horrible cut to the throat that would have killed anyone else took Nomu only a few seconds to heal. In a few moments, the creature was back to its pristine state as if it had never been wounded in the first place. Even so, Naruto was not done. Just as he landed on another wire, he once again used himself as an arrow against a bowstring and launched himself at Nomu once more. For the next 2 minutes and a half, making use of his numerous wires, Naruto slashed and stabbed the creature with his blades over 200 times, its putrid blood covering him from head to toes and transforming the entire area into a pool of blood. Bouncing like a pinball from one wire to another, Naruto had become so incredibly fast and unpredictable that Nomu's underdeveloped mental faculties could not find a way to stop him or counter him. Watching his supposedly ultimate weapon getting massacred like that, Shigaraki screamed. "What are you doing, Nomu? Destroy everything. Smash everything to dust." Reacting to its master's orders, Nomu let out a savage shriek and, raising its arms above its head, it smashed its fists against the ground with its entire strength. A terrible explosion followed and an immense crater appeared in the ground, the shockwave it generated snapping all of Naruto's metallic wires like paper before flinging him into one of the ruined buildings nearby. This time around, the fox boy could not get up anymore. He's too strong. He's too durable. His regeneration is beyond belief. If it had been him from his past life, one simple Adama Rasengan would have ground that monster to shreds. I miss having chakra. I miss my sage mode. In my sage mode, I could smash this guy into a bloody paste with one punch. For the first time since he was born into this world, Naruto felt acutely the limits of his fox quirk. Although he had awakened his quirk and gotten a second tail, and despite that his strength and agility had skyrocketed compared to before, it was still not enough. Even his ingenious tactics and his mastery over his weaponry proved to be fruitless. In front of Nomu's overwhelming power, healing factor and defense, all his efforts fell short. Sensing the monster slowly getting closer to him, he clenched his teeth in frustration and anger. Do I really have no other choice than to use it? Even as Nomu's enormous hand grabbed him from his head and he started screaming from the pain of having his skull squeezed by the creature's vice-like grip, he still hesitated to use his adamantine sealing chains. I won't use them. I won't put my mother in danger. He was not blind to the situation. He knew that, at that rate, he was going to get killed. But he could not bear the thought of potentially causing his parents' death by exposing his secret quirk. To him, Kushina and Minato, his mom and dad, were the most important people in the world. For him, the importance of their safety was far beyond that of his own life. But even as Nomu was attempting to crush his skull like a watermelon, Naruto did not give up on resisting. Amidst his screams of pain and agony, his nails transformed into fierce-looking claws and he started to stab and shred at the muscular arm holding him with reckless abandon. In that life and death moment, his survival instincts kicked in and his body no longer held back any of its strength. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, his claws viciously stabbed into Nomu's forearm and directly severed his arm in half. Naruto's normal human-like blue eyes transformed into the red and slit eyes of a fox and a third tail burst from his lower back through the already tattered fabric of his top. An animalistic growl came from his throat as he threw himself at the nightmarish creature in front of him. It was the hysterical assault of a cornered beast. As previously stated, all heroes needed to belong to a hero agency in order to receive missions from the Hero Public Safety Commission, HPSC. Usually, HPSC or the police department would contact the hero agencies directly for any missions. That was how HPSC prevented hero agencies from having conflicts over intruding on others' turf and how they remained organized. It was an unwritten law that unless it was an emergency situation, heroes would not regularly act in different cities and regions where their hero agencies did not have jurisdiction. However, there were exceptions to those rules too. For example, rarely would anyone dare to tell the number one hero off for working on their turf. Another exception also happened to be Mirko, the rabbit hero. Although her residence was in Hiroshima Prefecture, Mirko was a solitary hero, part of a one-woman hero agency. She had no sidekicks, no teammates, not even a secretary. Naturally, she did not have a proper headquarters either. This vagabond-like hero could be found operating over the entirety of Japan. Wild, rambunctious, and always looking for a fistfight, Mirko had become rather notorious among heroes and villains alike for her belligerent attitude and her free spirit. She never stayed in one place for too long, always rushing towards the place where she smelled an exciting fight. For solo heroes like Mirko and Eraserhead, but also for a better and faster way of mobilizing heroes from multiple agencies in case of natural disasters and other particularly grave emergencies, the HPSC had created a special portal, the Hero Network. It was also the fastest way for pro heroes to ask for assistance from other heroes. Mirko was just in the middle of eating a late breakfast when her smartphone vibrated with a notification. Momentarily putting down the carrot she had been munching on, she unlocked her phone and tapped on the notification. Unsurprisingly, it was from the Hero Network app. Urgent. Numerous members of the League of Villains attacked USJ and Shizuoka Prefecture. UA high school students in mortal peril. Requesting immediate assistance from all pro heroes close by. Her eyes widened in surprise for a moment, but then, she grinned in excitement. Without even changing from her pajamas into her hero costume, the rabbit girl jumped through the window of her hotel like a hurricane and threw herself into a mad sprint toward the address indicated on the GPS. She was a few tens of kilometers away from the address. Thinking of how far away she was, she increased her running speed even more, stirring powerful gales of wind in her wake like a racing car. She dearly hoped that the villains weren't all finished by the time she got there. Her legs were itching to give some people a good beating. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoy it. If you want the next part of this video, turn on that bell notification. Like, subscribe and comment down below. And also check out the others videos I have created and enjoyed it. See you guys next video.